Chapter 749. Immortal Yunha? In Immortal 1 area, outside the poison sealing array, the red-robed ancestor looked suspiciously at the female cultivator in front of him. If she hadn't claimed to be entrusted by Wang Wu and had the jade bamboo sword as a keepsake, the ancestor would have already suppressed her and interrogated her as a spy. It was too suspicious. She claimed that she was from Zhuqing in the eastern border province. Zhuqing was a famous city in the world, and it was a place of great heroes. At least 3 top-ranked sects in the eastern border province had set their headquarters in Zhuqing and its surrounding areas. Although red-robed patriarch wasn't from the eastern border region and was familiar with Zhuqiang, he had never heard of such a person in Zhuqiang. Of course, in the immortal cultivation world of the 9 regions, there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers, so it was normal for there to be unknown powerhouses. However, when all the heroes in the world were helpless against the strange poison of the fallen immortals, an unknown cultivator came out and said that she had a world-saving medicine. Normal people would think that there was a fraud in it. Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we try. Li Yunha smiled gently and walked towards a white jade coffin outside the poison sealing array. Sealed in the white jade coffin was the head disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Hong Feng. Because he had been delivered too late, he could not be placed in the poison sealing formation, and the white jade coffin alone could not suppress the spread of the poison. At this moment, Hong Feng's glabella was dark, and his eyeballs were rolling rapidly, as if he was about to make a move. This was a sign that the poison was about to break out. Once the poison broke out, it meant that Hong Feng would lose his mind and become a lackey of the fallen immortals. At that time, death would be a gift to him. Beside the coffin, the sect leader and a few elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School were already waiting with serious expressions, preparing to personally send their eldest disciple on his way. As Li Yunha approached, the few of them revealed complicated and vigilant expressions. They also suspected Li Yunha's identity, but at this moment, she was like a drowning man's straw, leaving them with no other choice. The elders silently gave way. Li Yunha nodded in acknowledgement and walked to the coffin. She took a deep breath and pressed her palm on the coffin lid. Suddenly, a gentle and loving light flowed out from her fingertips, easily penetrating the coffin lid and shining on Hong Feng's face. Hey, that's the holy light of the Western continent? The city of immortals was indeed a gathering of heroes. Among the people who guarded the poison array, there were experts who participated in the Western Continent War. At a glance, they could see that the light flowing in Li Yunha's hand was the holy light of the Western continent. The person sighing did not think too much about it, but the elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School seemed to have been triggered, and they subconsciously reached out to Li Yunha. In the eyes of the people of 9 regions, the things of the Western continent were, after all, somewhat of a heretical cult. How could they not be alarmed when a strange female cultivator suddenly displayed a heretical power? However, the elder who made the move did not notice that although Li Yunha appeared to be calm, she needed to use all her strength to maintain the holy light. She was completely focused, and if she was disturbed at this time, the consequences would be hard to predict. In the next moment, an emerald green light cut through space and appeared beside Li Yunha out of thin air. Pa! Pa! After 2 crisp sounds, the 2 elders who had subconsciously attacked retracted their arms while enduring the pain. Then, they looked at the woman in white who had suddenly appeared in front of them in bewilderment. Wang Wu, you are after all the elders of a prestigious sect. Don't casually make a move on a woman, okay? Especially when the other party is already taken. The elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School still couldn't adapt to this rapid change and subconsciously asked, Who? Wang Wu patted her proud chest. Of course it's me. Besides me, who else is worthy of the Holy Light religion's holy woman? With that, she no longer paid attention to the elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Instead, she turned her head and attentively watched Li Yunha release the holy light. Then, she quietly held Li Yunha's other hand that was hanging on the side of her body. Not long after, Li Yunha lifted her hand from the coffin lid and wiped the sweat off her forehead. It's done. Okay? The elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School couldn't wait any longer. They quickly gathered around and were pleasantly surprised to see Hong Feng open his eyes. He was somewhat sleepy and somewhat confused as he murmured, Here, where is this? The next moment, the heavy coffin lid was lifted. In his confusion, Hong Feng was hugged by his master. His master, who had always been strict, unexpectedly trembled at this time. Hong Feng, it's good that you're okay, it's good that you're okay. Soon, the news that Taoist Master Yunhe of the eastern border region could detoxify the strange poison of the fallen immortals spread like an explosion in the city of immortals. However, while people were ecstatic, they didn't notice that those who had been detoxified by the holy light looked at Li Yunhe and Wang Wu with something more than usual. Is this Thunder Reservoir? In the River of Stars, Wang Lu suddenly stopped and was shocked by the spectacle in front of him. Bypassing the River of Stars, he saw hundreds of billions of stars gathered into a pool, which was dazzling. The thunder in the pool was like a snake. Each thunder exploded like a lightning tribulation, which made people's heart tremble. In the face of such a scene, no immortal cultivator would be indifferent. The Thunder Reservoir contained the truth of heaven and earth, as well as the great terror that could destroy heaven and earth. The further one went on the road of immortal cultivation, the more profound the resonance was. That kind of instinctive fear made Wang Lu suddenly stop. However, it only paused for a moment before Wang Lu set off again. It's really a beautiful place. With a sigh of emotion, Wang Lu's eyes showed a trace of appreciation. He then took a deep breath and moved faster and faster. Xian Mo followed behind Wang Lu and looked at his back. Suddenly, she felt that she couldn't catch up. Not long ago, when Xian Mo witnessed the wonder of Thunder Reservoir for the first time, her mind went blank for a full incense stick of time. If Bai Zhe hadn't woken up in time and woken her up, perhaps she would have been shocked for a longer time. However, how long did it take for Wang Lu to regain consciousness? 1 breath, 2 breaths? Moreover, after waking up, his will was so firm that he completely ignored the terrifying aura of Thunder Reservoir and moved forward faster and faster. When Xian Mo saw this, she was slightly stunned. Faster and faster? Before this, Wang Lu was already running at full speed. How come he was even faster now? Xian Mo pondered for a moment and suddenly understood. Right now, Wang Lu was using the pressure of the Thunder Reservoir to cleanse his immortal heart. He was using the purity of his immortal heart to promote the growth of his nascent soul. This guy he was cultivating while walking. No wonder his speed was getting faster and faster. He had just entered the nascent soul stage, and with his strong foundation, this was the time when his cultivation speed was the fastest. With the help of the Thunder Reservoir, it was as if he was flying by leaps and bounds. As for Xian Mo himself, due to his heavy injuries, he couldn't keep up with Wang Lu's pace. At this moment, a hand suddenly appeared in front of Xian Mo. Wang Lu didn't turn around. Keep up. Xian Mo smiled and pulled Wang Lu's hand. Borrowing his strength, her speed increased by another level. No wonder Tetragon treats you differently. Wang Lu squinted his eyes and asked with a smile. Because I am fast enough? Not long after, Wang Lu and Xian Mo walked along a hidden path, avoiding the wild lightning and entering the depths of the Thunder Reservoir. There was another world in the Thunder Reservoir. It was a huge Shura-killing field. Looking around, red rain fell from the sky and the sea of blood was like lava. Wang Lu believed that not long ago, this place was a beautiful secret paradise. From the corner of his eyes, he could still see the celestial mountain towering above the sea of blood. The mountain was lush with trees and there were birds and beasts. However, at this moment, the beautiful scenery of the celestial mountain was washed away by the rain of blood. The trees withered and the beasts died. The celestial mountain had become the netherworld. Below the mountainside, it was soaked in a thick sea of blood. The sea of blood was as deep as hell. From time to time, it would stir and surge with a color as black as ink, as if it was brewing a great terror. Seeing this scene, Xian Mo's body trembled slightly. It actually worsened so quickly. Over there. Wang Lu looked in the direction of her finger and saw a purple shadow in the thick ink-like blood clouds. Although the color was dim and the light was weak, Wang Lu would never mistake it for an emperor's purple aura. Tetragon was over there. Alright, we have found the first target. Next is the second target. If there was Tetragon, of course there would be black. Around the purple shadow there was a bottomless darkness. In the darkness there was a flash of light from time to time, but it was quickly swallowed by the darkness like a wave in the sea. Xian Mo covered her mouth, her eyes could not help but pour out sadness. The flash in the darkness was Dixion's companions who rushed over after hearing the news. Most of the people who were exiled by Tetragon had come here to fight against Black. However, these rare experts who once caused the world to change color with a wave of their hands seemed to be vulnerable in front of Black, who had the advantage of time and place. Her companions, on the other hand, were now fighting to the death. The Dixian did not die that easily, but under the darkness, it was nothing more than a deathbed struggle. Black fought many Earth-level deities alone and even suppressed Senior Gem Emperor, but he was still able to do it with ease. Wang Lu and Xian Mo only felt a chill, as if they were being targeted by something cruel and powerful. Now I regret not bringing Wang Wu along. Obviously, when Wang Lu and Xian Mo saw Black, Black also saw them. And in the face of such a powerful expert who could destroy the world, the two of them were really insignificant. Whether it was Wang Lu's divine weapon arsenal or Xian Mo that he still held in his hand, or the trump card that he was ready to fight to the death, in the face of this torrential momentum, it was not worth mentioning. However, at this point I can only move forward bravely. Wang Lu exhaled, put on a smile again, and then moved toward the darkness at a faster speed. The aura of the thunder pool could help him cultivate, so of course Black, who was still above the thunder pool, could also do the same. Wang Lu's jade mansion and immortal heart were sharpened, and the light was reflected on his nascent soul. The basic three-colored nascent soul vaguely burst out a fourth kind of light. Of course, at this time, even if he was promoted to 9-colored nascent soul, it was still not enough. But at this time it was also too late to turn around and escape. He could only trust Tetragon's judgment. She repeatedly urged him to come here, so it was not to let him die, right? Wang Lu, Xian Mo's voice sounded in his ears. Tetragon wants to see you, so he must have a plan to turn the tables. Later I will find a way to entangle Black. Even if it is only for a moment, I will definitely fight for an opportunity for you. Good. The next moment, Xian Mo suddenly broke out. In one step he arrived in front of Wang Lu and like a stream of light, rushed toward Black without hesitation. Chapter 750. Open. Following Xian Mo's earth-shattering roar, a vast amount of immortal spirit gushed out of her body, stirring up the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the lightning pool battlefield, forming a terrifying immortal technique. Open. The name of the immortal technique was only one word, but the power it contained was endless. The gate of opening was opened, the mountain splitting was opened, and the heaven-splitting earth was also opened. Xian Mo's great immortal technique smashed into the endless darkness in front of her, only to see the pitch-black world rolling and tumbling. A thin crack suddenly appeared in the middle. In the crack there was a clear sky and a warm breeze like heaven in purgatory. Dixion's power could indeed change heaven and earth. Compared to this great immortal technique, even the heaven's punishment lightning seemed to be overshadowed. Black, who had the advantage of time and place, didn't look so invincible anymore. Although the ray of light in the darkness was weak, it was like a spark of fire, igniting endless hope. At the same time, more than 10 rays of light exploded from the place that was wrapped in the darkness. It was Dixian, who was previously swallowed by the darkness, burning her life to respond to the ray of light in the darkness. Wang Lu, hurry! Golden blood gushed out of Xian Mo's 7 orifices. In order to maintain this great immortal technique, she had already overloaded herself. Her celestial body and jade bones were breaking under the backlash. Although the fire of hope in the darkness was burning, her fire of life was constantly weakening. However, at this moment, Wang Lu seemed to be stunned. He just stood there and didn't move. Xian Mo's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She urged again, hurry! I can't hold on much longer. Before she finished speaking, Wang Lu's expression changed. He stretched out his hand, but his movement was still half a beat too slow. In front of him, the darkness that was split in half suddenly merged together, and the ray of light was instantly extinguished. Above the sky, countless rays of lightning bloomed in the blood clouds, instantly converged into one and shot down. The thick lightning pillar was 1,000 feet in diameter, and it completely swallowed Xian Mo. The lightning pillar only struck for a moment. When the light dissipated, a circular hole with a radius of 10,000 feet appeared in the sea of blood below. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. The sea of blood surged and roared, but when it passed by the hollow, It automatically circled around it and didn't come into contact with it. It was as if the space here had already been distorted, and a special passage that didn't allow any external objects to pass was blasted out by the thunderbolt. Putting aside the fact that Xian Mo was like a lamp that had run out of oil, even if he was in perfect condition, it would still be difficult for him to face such power head-on. This was the wrath of the heavens and earth within the pool of lightning, and it wasn't something a single creature could go against. However, Xian Mo did not die. At this time, Xian Mo was standing on the top of a barren mountain. He was held in Wang Lu's arms. His whole body was trembling and weak, and faint golden tears of blood flowed down from his eyes. It was Wang Lu who saved her. At the critical moment of life and death, a pitch-black rapier appeared in her place, and Xian Mo herself was transferred into Wang Lu's arms. Wang Lu sacrificed a flying sword with a numinous treasure in exchange for Xian Mo's life. Fortunately, I guessed it, Wang Lu said coldly. He let go of Xian Mo and let her lie on the ground. The top of the barren mountain was washed by the rain of blood, and the ground was covered with blood. Xian Mo's gauze-like celestial robe was soon stained with red and black, but she didn't seem to notice it. She was still lying on the ground with her head buried. I'll give you 5 seconds to adjust. Just now, Wang Lu exchanged the spiritual sword for Xian Mo. This kind of human sword exchange was based on the foundation of the human sword unity. At the critical moment of life and death, the sword spirit of the black sword forcibly resonated with Xian Mo, and swapped her out of the range of the thunderbolt, while the sword spirit itself disappeared. At that moment, Xian Mo was indeed saved, but she was also severely injured. Her mind was almost completely destroyed. She could feel the pain and resentment of the sword spirit of the black sword before it died. Unfortunately, there was no more time for her to slowly calm down. She could only use her immortal heart to suppress the throbbing and restore her calmness. Okay, I can do it again later. Wang Lu was silent for a moment, then nodded. Okay, do it again. When Xian Mo attacked for the first time, Wang Lu, with his extraordinary judgment and intuition, guessed that the black was probably luring the snake out of its hole, so he was lucky enough to escape. Then Wang Lu guessed that the black should not be able to prepare another thunderbolt. After the thunderbolt just now, the blood cloud above their heads was obviously much thinner, and there were a lot less lightning snakes swimming in it. However, the situation did not become advantageous because of this. Xian Mo's attack did not succeed, and she was already on the verge of collapse. Golden blood kept gushing out of her 7 orifices, and her flawless skin cracked in large areas. Seemed like she could fall at any time. But Xian Mo did not intend to give up. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes. Her pupils became blood red, and the platinum blood flowing out of her 7 orifices flowed back into her body. The color also changed from gold to dark red. Wang Lu raised his eyebrows. He knew that Xian Mo was no longer risking her life. She was basically risking her life. She was compressing her immortal spirit, converging all the remaining power in her body and compressing it, hoping to release the strongest explosion. That was why the blood that came into contact with the immortal spirit would turn red again, and the blood that she lost would be pulled back into her body by this suction force. But this compression method was built on the basis that there was no return. Immortal spirit, primordial spirit, jade bones, spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Once all of them were mixed together, it would be difficult to separate them. However, if this was not the case, how could the seriously injured and dying Xian Mo use the second great immortal technique? After noticing Xian Mo's movement, Black immediately reacted. Although the thunder snakes in the sky were small and insignificant, they all roared and rushed down from the clouds. In the blood sea, various kinds of demonic beasts and demon spirits jumped out, ready to encircle and annihilate. Seeing this situation, Wang Lu was inwardly moved. He immediately opened the divine weapon arsenal and lined up all the spiritual treasure-level divine weapons beside him. Go! Wang Lu made a sword finger, aimed at the thunder falling from the clouds, and shouted. Suddenly, a short sword turned into a flash of light and rushed up, colliding with the falling thunder, and the two disappeared. At the same time, there were another 3 flying swords of fire, respectively facing the 3 demon spirits in the blood sea, and then resolutely self-destructed, evaporating these powerful demon spirits in an instant. The cultivation of nascent soul level was no longer enough to protect oneself on this battlefield, and could only rely on the heavenly weapon arsenal to use extravagant and cruel means to delay. Xian Mo clearly sensed all this, and her heart kept surging with grief. After a brief resonance with the sword spirit of the black sword, she knew very well how painful and desperate it was for these flying swords with spiritual nature to be used as consumables to self-destruct. And as the main messenger, Wang Lu, he was not born cold-blooded and cruel, and he must also be under great pressure to use his sword finger to drive the flying swords to die. Therefore, she could not waste this precious opportunity. However, just when Xian Mo was about to integrate everything, she was suddenly stopped by Wang Lu. Wait. Xian Mo's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you crazy? This is a terrible price to buy a moment of time, and you actually want to wait? Wait for what? Can't you see that in this battlefield, time is more advantageous to the side? Wait. Wang Lu emphasized again, and his voice was a little heavier. Xian Mo resisted the pressure of burning her internal organs, and decided to listen to Wang Lu's opinion. It was just that. What are you waiting for? Wang Lu was silent for a moment, and then his voice trembled slightly. I don't know. But I think now it's Black urging us to act. With that, he suddenly stretched out his right hand and propped up a golden non-phase sword defense, which wrapped the two of them in it, and then his left hand pointed in another direction. The next moment, the two people inside the sword defense disappeared from the top of the mountain and appeared in another place. It was a place filled with dazzling galaxies, a place that was cold yet hot, outside the Thunder Reservoir. Fortunately, I was cautious enough to set up a road sign before I came. The so-called road sign was naturally a flying sword that had been arranged in advance. However, before Wang Lu's voice fell, Xian Mo grabbed his collar, stared at him with blood-red eyes, and asked Wang Lu, "What the hell do you want to do?" It's a simple logic. Wang Lu grasped Xian Mo's wrist and opened his slender hands a little bit so that he could speak clearly. The more the enemy wants us to do, the more we can't do it. Black's approach seems to be anxiously urging us to launch the second attack, but in theory, he has no reason to be anxious. Time is more advantageous to him. Xian Mo calmed down a little. And then I guess he has encountered some trouble and needs to solve the two of us as soon as possible so that he can solve that trouble. In other words, he can't split himself. So you want to say now time is on our side? Xian Mo asked. These are all your guesses. How sure are you? Less than 10%. Wang Lu shook his head. But at that time the probability of success for the second attack is less than 1%. Xian Mo gritted his teeth and realized that what Wang Lu said was true. At that time, Black could fall thunder from the sky and summon demon spirits from the sea of blood. So he didn't know how many cards he had. So wait a minute, I think the variables will come soon. Black is probably coming soon. In the city of immortals, Luo Xiao raised his head high. His eyes passed through the thick dome of the city of immortals as if he could see an infinitely distant place. Are you sure? Luo Xiao shook his head and said with a smile, mind disorientation powder has been dispelled, and the cards have been revealed. If he still refuses to come back, I will kneel down and call him father. Moreover, for me, I don't need to be so sure. With a 10 to 20% chance, I can bet on it. Even if things fail, how much loss can I suffer? If I hold the thigh of the fallen immortal, Black can't kill me. After a pause, Luo Xiao said, but I think he will come back. If mind disorientation powder is dispelled, maybe he can endure it, but if he loses this thing, he will die. Xu Si looked at the cyan bottle in Luo Xiao's hand and asked curiously, what is this thing? Why is it so important? Luo Xiao threw the bottle over and said, the root of mind disorientation powder, the vortex of the fallen. Huh. Xu Si was startled. In a flurry, he almost dropped the bottle to the ground. Chapter 751. Xu Si carefully held the porcelain bottle. He was afraid that the porcelain bottle would be damaged accidentally, which would lead to the failure of the plan. He was even more afraid that the poison in the porcelain bottle would leak out. Although he was now theoretically the lackey of the fallen immortals, it made no difference whether he was poisoned or not. At the same time, Xian Yinzi raised a question. Are you sure you can lure Black back with this thing? The source of mind disorientation powder is indeed very important, But now the spread of the poison in the City of Immortals has been contained. With Li Yunhe, mind disorientation powder can no longer pose any threat. This move is tantamount to a dead end. Why should Black pay attention to the vortex of the fallen? Good question. Luo Xiao said with a smile. If mind disorientation powder is just a strange poison in the general sense, then Black really doesn't need to care about the source of the poison. However, mind disorientation powder is not a poison, but a kind of faith. Faith? Yes, faith. It's just that this kind of faith is very overbearing, and the way of spreading it is quite special. Xu Si was a bit confused, but Xianninzi quickly understood. You mean similar to the mind control of a cult? Yes, mind disorientation powder is the sublimation of the cult's bewitchment into something substantial. However, in essence it is a kind of faith. And since there is faith, there is naturally a totem to be worshipped. Luo Xiao said and pointed to the small bottle in Xu Si's hand. In that small bottle, the fallen immortals stripped out a part of their own existence and used it as a totem to worship and a vortex of the root of the continuous spread of faith. In a sense, it can be regarded as the avatar of the fallen immortals. After a pause, Luo Xiao further explained, for Black, losing the avatar of the fallen immortals in 9 regions is like the Zen Baldies losing the golden body of Buddha. To be serious, this is a crime of blasphemy. Losing a bottle will be convicted of blasphemy? Xu Si was a bit incredulous. The fallen immortals are not equal to us. We are like livestock and pets to them. They can kill or cut us in a moment, so don't mention the ridiculous question of why the fallen immortals are so strict with us. Xianninzi asked, but Luo Xiao must have something important to do when he leaves the City of Immortals at this time. If he rashly puts down his work and comes back because of you, isn't he afraid of being judged by the fallen immortals as dereliction of duty? It's better to have no achievements than to make mistakes. This was a principle that had to be grasped when working under a high-pressure master. No matter how important the task at hand was, if he succeeded, he would only be rewarded by his master. However, if the vortex of the fallen is lost, the fallen immortals will not pay attention to the balance of merits and demerits and pardon your blasphemy. I see. Xianninzi sighed. You really have studied the fallen immortals thoroughly. Luo Xiao smiled and said, if I can't see through it and can't grasp my master's thoughts, then I can't be a qualified loyal dog. Alright, I've explained everything that needs to be explained. Next, I need you to cooperate with me to set up a trap that will make Black unable to return. First of all, Xianninzi, I need you to play your original role, a sharp nail inserted in the fallen immortal camp. Xianninzi roughly guessed Luo Xiao's thoughts at this time. He nodded and said, yes. But Luo Xiao, what you're doing now, is it really just for? Luo Xiao said with a smile, of course, it's just to eradicate competitors so that I can be favored in the future. Xianninzi, you're not naive enough to think that I will stand on your side, are you? At the same time, in another infinitely distant corner of the Tomb of Immortals. It's moving. Outside Thunder Reservoir, Wang Lu finally waited for the change that he was looking forward to. A black figure sprang out from the center of Thunder Reservoir, like a black stream of light. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared at the other end of the galaxy. At the same time, Thunder Reservoir, which was releasing energy violently, seemed to have lost its backbone and became a lot more comfortable and restrained. It seems that Black really can't wait. Wang Lu waited outside Thunder Reservoir for a moment to confirm that the opponent was not trying to lure the snake out of the hole, but was really forced to give up Thunder Reservoir by an unexpected event. Only then did he completely take back the divine weapon arsenal. This time he won the bet again. Black did encounter a problem that he had to put down everything to deal with. Therefore, in the Thunder Reservoir battlefield, all his efforts were in vain. Without the source of the storm, the aura of Thunder Reservoir became deep and restrained, no longer fierce and unrestrained. Wang Lu took Xianmo's hand and entered Thunder Reservoir again. It was still the Sea of Blood, but the Sea of Blood was drying up and the dark clouds were dissipating. Everything began to go on the right track. Without the cover of the endless darkness, all the details of the battlefield could be seen clearly. Wang Lu saw the purple light in the middle of the world at a glance. Although it was dim and in a sorry state, it was not completely extinguished. Tetragon was still alive, so everything was fine. Tetragon was also surrounded by more than 10 Dixian with different appearances. Most of them were old faces, such as Swan Xian and Liu Biechen. Almost all of these Dixian were seriously injured, and their fire of life was about to be extinguished. There were also a few who were held in the arms of others, motionless. Obviously, they had died heroically in the battle just now. Wang Lu, you're finally here. Tetragon's voice was very weak, and there was a strong sense of self-mockery in his tone. Being seen by you in such a sorry state, it's really a disgrace to the Emperor. However, I only have myself to blame, so I have nothing to say. Time is limited, so I'll go straight to the point. Wang Lu, there's someone who wants to see you. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but be surprised, because the words of Senior Gem Emperor vaguely revealed such a message. The status of that person was a bit higher than Senior Gem Emperor. That was why this proud emperor was willing to be a mouthpiece, and thought of a way to get Wang Lu to come over even in times of danger. Tetragon was already the emperor of Dixian, and there was only one person who had a higher status than her. This was a simple deduction, and everyone present was stupid enough to not understand this. Boss is still alive? Sun Buping is not dead? Tetragon ignored the questions of others, and just silently nodded to Wang Lu. He wants to see you, come with me. With that, the purple light flashed and came to Wang Lu's side. Tetragon stretched out his hand to grab Wang Lu's wrist, and then suddenly fell, passing through the blood sea, passing through the earth, and arriving at a place tens of thousands of feet underground. Tetragon's speed was extremely fast, but Wang Lu could still barely make out that along the way, they seemed to have passed through many different areas. Among them, there was a frozen earth layer full of cold air, a high-temperature layer with boiling lava, and a lightning layer highly condensed with the power of thunder. It was like a solid line of defense, firmly guarding the secrets of the lowest layer. Finally, under Tetragon's lead, Wang Lu entered a white space. There was a person standing in the middle of the space. His figure was like a drop in the ocean in the infinitely vast space, but that person had an unusually strong sense of existence. Standing there, people's eyes could not help but focus on him, and unknowingly, they lost their attention to the whole world. Sun Buping? It's me. Wang Lu was a bit absent-minded. This legendary Earth Immortal leader was similar to what he had expected, but also different from what he had expected. Sun Buping looked a bit unprepossessing. His facial features and figure were very ordinary, and there were no luxurious clothes on his body. However, his temperament was so unique, as if he was out of place with everything around him, which was very eye-catching. So, the secret at the bottom of the City of Immortals that made Tetragon so confused is referring to you? No, I'm just an adjunct. Sun Buping showed a meticulous smile. The real secret is under my feet. Wang Lu looked at the pure white ground under his feet and said, "Is there anything else under here?" To be precise, under your feet, above your head. Everything you see is part of this secret. Sun Buping said with a smile, it seems that the more I talk, the more I seem to be in a fog. Unfortunately, time is tight, so I may not be able to finish the story. Wang Lu said, it doesn't matter, I'm all ears. Sun Buping was silent for a moment. As you can see, I am Sun Buping, the defeated general 16,000 years ago. Tetragon obviously had something to say, but he was stopped by Sun Buping. A loss is a loss, there's no need to be hypocritical. However, I have never given up the pursuit of victory, even if I am buried in the group of immortal tombs. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but frown. The establishment of the group of immortal tombs was a sign that after a long struggle, the Dixian finally gave up hope and entrusted everything to the future generations. However, Sun Buping's words were obviously different from the facts. Chapter 752. Sun Buping's words made Wang Lu slightly alert. It wasn't that he was worried that Sun Buping would harm him. If the mighty Dixian really wanted to do anything to him, he would have died a long time ago. Moreover, the two sides had no conflict of interest and were in the same trench. However, it was precisely because of this that he had to be even more vigilant. Sometimes the existence of a useless teammate was equivalent to 10 enemies. He thought that it was for your own good, but he didn't know that it would cause you to suffer a fate worse than death. The mighty leader of the Dixian camp, a hero with both wisdom and courage, of course wouldn't be a useless teammate, but he might be even worse than a useless teammate. This kind of person would often not ask for others' opinions when doing things. To put it nicely, he was swift and decisive, but to put it bluntly, he was headstrong and self-opinionated. When Wang Lu was a leader, he was a headstrong and self-opinionated person. What he hated the most was being headstrong and self-opinionated. When he was with Tetragon, the difference in their cultivation was like heaven and earth, but he continued to fight for the initiative and forcibly occupied an equal position. However, the peerless Dixian Sun Booping in front of him might not be willing to give him this opportunity. Just as Wang Lu had this thought, his vision blurred. Sun Booping suddenly appeared in front of him and reached out his hand to touch the space between his eyebrows. Sorry, time is limited, so I can only use this crude method to tell you a story. The next moment, Wang Lu's mind was flooded with a torrent. Damn. He really is a headstrong and self-opinionated person who doesn't listen to others. In a daze, Sun Booping's voice began to ring in Wang Lu's mind. I was born in a fisherman's family at the foot of Kunlun Immortal Mountain. My family doted on me since I was a child. Although my family was ordinary, I had no worries. When I was 5, a cultivator on Immortal Mountain came to my house on a whim and asked for a Qingjiang fish. That fish was the first fish I caught when I went out to sea with my father. Although I was reluctant, I couldn't not give it to an immortal cultivator. That cultivator saw that I was reluctant and suddenly smiled. Today I had a whim and wanted to eat a Qingjiang fish. I thought it was because I couldn't forget the taste of my childhood. So this fate has landed on you. After that, he brought me up the mountain and accepted me as his disciple. I started my immortal cultivation career in the Kunlun Immortal Mountain. My master is a rogue cultivator. He was born in Kunlun and was once a talented cultivator. However, because he violated the rules of the sect, he was exiled by the sect. But because he has contributed greatly to Kunlun, while he is exiled in name, there is a place for him in the sect. Master is a very interesting person. He taught me how to cultivate, but he also taught me how to be a person. He said that he didn't have any other achievements in his life, but there were 3 things that he was most proud of. First, he liked to meddle in other people's business. As long as he didn't like something, he would take responsibility for it. Secondly, he would never admit defeat. Sometimes he would poke his nose into other people's business and provoke a powerful opponent. If he was no match for them, he would redouble his efforts in cultivation until he could surpass his opponent. He had lost countless battles in his life, but he had never admitted defeat. Thirdly, he was so good at stirring up trouble, but he was still alive. Then I understood why he and I have the fate of master and disciple. Because I was also a busybody, a person who wouldn't admit defeat no matter what. When I was 5 years old, I went fishing with my father. It was because of a trivial matter that I made a bet with the village head's mischievous little tyrant that I could catch a Qingjiang fish. If I really did catch one, then he couldn't use his father's name to bully the weak. If I couldn't do it, I've long forgotten what to do if I can't do it, because in the end I did it. Like master, I am a nosy person who would never admit defeat. My talent in cultivation is not excellent. My achievements today are largely due to luck, so it's not worth being proud of. After cultivating for more than 1,000 years, what really makes me proud is that I have never turned a blind eye to injustice, never compromised because my strength is inferior. Of course, the main credit belongs to my master. Without him to protect me, I would have died a long time ago because I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, master can protect me for a while, but he can't protect me for a lifetime. In the end, I still provoked a big trouble. I provoked the fallen immortals. The existence of the fallen immortals can be traced back to the Age of Desolation. The corners of the historical books are full of traces of their existence. It's just that people have always regarded them as a group of desperate lunatics who failed to ascend to immortality. Little did they know that their real bodies are the true immortals that are admired by 9 regions. In fact, until today, there are still some people who are unwilling to admit this fact. They think that ascending to immortality means ascending to the land of bliss. They refuse to admit that even in the immortal world, there is still the danger of falling. This is a group of opponents that no one wants to provoke. For tens of thousands of years, even the records in the history books are vague. They only know that they occasionally descend to the lower realm, like hunters on a hunting ground, acting unscrupulously in 9 regions and causing endless harm. Fortunately, the frequency of this kind of thing is not high, perhaps only once in hundreds or thousands of years. Unfortunately, this time I encountered it. And I can't stand to see injustice in the world. At that time, I was already one of the few experts in the world. Many people respectfully called me the Earth True Immortal. However, in front of the fallen immortals, I was as vulnerable as a young child. If it weren't for Master who risked his life to save me, I would have died without a burial place at that time. Before Master died, he told me that this matter should be over. No matter what the fallen immortals did, don't be impulsive, because no one will come to save me later. But he said it too late. If it was 500 years ago, when I was still the son of a fisherman, I would remember it firmly. But I have been trained by him for 500 years, and my unwillingness to admit defeat has long been deep in my bones. So in the end, I disobeyed Master's order and spared no effort to avenge him. After that, there was a series of battles between Dixian and the fallen immortals. You already know the story. But there's one thing you don't know. After the failure of the war against the fallen immortals, most of the brothers were disheartened. Therefore, according to the original backup plan, they built the city of immortals and pinned their hopes on the future generations. At that time, with the help of Gem, I faked my death to deceive the enemy, intending to give the fallen immortals a surprise. However, after the decisive battle, the fallen immortals were also seriously injured, and the space channel was closed, so they did not choose to pursue. After that, Gem took me into the tomb of immortals and said that I had done enough, and it was time to rest. Actually, Gem is right. I did do enough. The fallen immortal who killed Master has been killed by me. The plan of the fallen immortals to invade 9 regions has also been temporarily thwarted. It is no exaggeration to say that I have played the role of the savior of 9 regions once, but I am still unwilling to give up just like that. Although the passage through which the fallen immortals entered 9 regions has been closed, sooner or later it will be reopened. At that time, instead of relying on the future generations, I hope to defeat them with my own hands. This obsession of not admitting defeat made me restless even when I was seriously injured and dying. I have thought countless times about how to defeat those immortals who have already ascended. In the end, there was only one answer I got: foreign objects. With my own strength alone, it is impossible to surpass those true immortals who have passed through the thunder tribulation and ascended. However, true immortals are not omnipotent. Their personal strength is absolutely incomparable to the power of heaven and earth. Even if 9 regions is fragile and small compared to the immortal world, the fallen immortals can't fight with the immortal world. However, we can rely on 9 regions and draw endless power from this land. Of course, I believe you also know that we are not the only ones who can use the power of 9 regions. The fallen immortals also ascended from 9 regions, and their understanding of this land is deeper than ours. The use of some of the power was so profound that it left people dumbfounded. At the beginning of the war, many of my companions thought that they were blessed by the providence of heaven and earth, but as a result, they died tragically. Hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but sigh. In his previous life, Onyanshang suffered a big loss in this regard. Although he had the protection of 9 regions, he was forced by a seriously injured fallen immortal to bind his hands and feet. Later, he and the fallen immortal blew themselves up, and their primordial spirit wandered in different worlds for a long time. In fact, it was more or less in order to wash away the too deep imprint of 9 regions. To use a popular metaphor, the fallen immortals were like bureaucrats who were one level higher than them. Wang Lu's solution was to emigrate overseas, change their nationality, and then gain an innate advantage according to the sequence of first-class foreigners and second-class officials. However, there were too many coincidences in this kind of thing, so it was impossible to replicate. And the method that Sun Buping thought of was obviously not this. It's not enough to borrow power directly from 9 regions. However, when I re-examined the group of immortal tombs, I found that this place that contains the boundless world is also a treasure with infinite power. Moreover, no matter how brilliant the fallen immortals are, they can't beat us in this. The biggest advantage of the group of immortal tombs lies in the creation. Whether it's the creation from the void or the real creation, in this special space, the law of creation is greatly enriched. And I am ready to make full use of this to build a divine weapon that can compete with the fallen immortals. This work is very difficult. It took me 10,000 years to build this divine weapon in the group of immortal tombs. It has unimaginably terrifying power. To put it bluntly, this is a supreme divine weapon that is above the rank of immortal treasure. Above the rank of immortal treasure? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was shocked. Immortal treasure, as the name implied, was the magical treasure used by the true immortals. It was also the highest rating of magical treasures in 9 regions. And if it wanted to be above the immortal treasure, it meant that its magical power must surpass all the magical treasures recorded in the history books of all the ages. Was this really possible? The next moment, the scene in front of Wang Lu changed again. A huge mountain-like white humanoid puppet appeared in front of him. This is the result of my life's work. Although it's an artificial thing, it's stronger than any living person in the world. It just needs a qualified controller. Wang Lu took a closer look and couldn't help but be amazed. The puppet in front of him was more than 3,000 meters tall, and initially had the shape of a human. The material was a mysterious metal of unknown composition, which looked unusually strong. The surface of the metal was engraved with all kinds of inscriptions, which made the huge puppet look mysterious and unpredictable. On the chest of the puppet there was a door. Behind the door was a spacious room with a throne inside, which should be the control center of the puppet, and this shape and structure made Wang Lu really couldn't help but think of something that he saw when he was wandering in multiple worlds. Senior Sunbooping, the divine weapon that you rely on to turn the tables is actually Gundam? Chapter 753. What is Gundam? No, it's nothing, please don't mind it. After the initial consternation, Wang Lu quickly realized that the Gundam-like metal puppet he saw was not a dramatic coincidence, but a most reasonable product. What Sun Booping said before was right. If he wanted to make up for the difference in strength between him and the fallen immortal, he had to rely on the power of external objects. However, no matter how sharp the weapon was, it could not cover up the weakness of the user. No matter how sharp the sword was, if it fell into the hands of a child, it would be difficult to say what threat it would pose. If he wanted to leave no flaws, he had to strengthen the user's ability. However, this was tantamount to returning the problem to its origin. If there was a way to make the cultivator's own strength surpass that of the fallen immortal, why would he work so hard to sharpen external objects? And a humanoid puppet was the perfect answer to these two contradictions. However, in this flying immortal world, it was inevitable for Wang Lu to be shocked when he suddenly saw this kind of thing. After thinking about it, Wang Lu put down the surprise in his heart and asked, "Thank you, Senior, for telling me such a long story, but why do you want to tell me this?" Sun Booping's Gundam was indeed powerful, but it was obviously his own car and had nothing to do with outsiders. And this kind of sharp weapon took Sun Booping 10,000 years to build. Obviously, there would not be a second one at present. Moreover, if it was really a supreme immortal treasure, why would there be a second one? So, in short, whether it was the story just now or the Gundam, what did it have to do with Wang Lu? Since you're so powerful, then drive the Gundam to sweep away the fallen immortals. I will remember to cheer for you. Sun Booping smiled and said, "I'm dying." Dying? Wang Lu asked in surprise. The injury from 16,000 years ago hasn't healed yet? Or was it because of Black's plot just now? Sun Booping said, "My lifespan is coming to an end." Lifespan is coming to an end? Wang Lu felt that this reason was absurd. How could the dignified leader of the Dixian leave at such a critical moment for such a reason? There are no immortal things in this world. No matter how strong a cultivator is, there has never been an example of someone who can live as long as heaven and earth. My normal lifespan is about 8,000 years, and I have lost more than half of it in many fierce battles with the fallen immortals. Then, in the group of immortal tombs, I exhausted all means to forcibly extend my lifespan. However, when I reached 10,000 years, I was like a dried-up oil lamp, and so far I have overdrawn my lifespan for 2,000 years. I also didn't expect that after 10,000 years, the group of immortal tombs has not been opened, and the fallen immortals have never appeared again. But, fortunately, I was able to complete this godly weapon. As Sun Booping spoke, he sighed in amusement. Actually, when I first started to build it, I thought that even if I spent the rest of my life, I would only be able to complete a rough framework at most, and that I would need a fated person in the future to complete it. In the end, it was you who worked so hard until the end. Wang Lu was silent for a while and then asked, then, you finally completed this miraculous product, and you're going to leave peacefully? Sun Buping said with a self-deprecating smile, I'm afraid I can't say peaceful. After overdrawing my lifespan for 2,000 years, if there is reincarnation, I'm afraid I would have to reincarnate in the animal path for 10,000 years to pay off this debt. If there is no reincarnation after I die, I would have to suffer thousands of lightning tribulations to be free. But in any case, my time is indeed coming. So, sorry for being a bit long-winded just now. It's okay, it's understandable. Wang Lu said, but back to the original question, these things, what do they have to do with me? When Sun Buping died of old age, Tetragon would take over. If something happened to Tetragon, there was still Bai Zai Xianmo, and the entire Wanxian League. Why did he have to go through so much trouble to find me to say such meaningless nonsense? Because I need you to drive it. Me. Wang Lu widened his eyes in disbelief and turned to look at the metal puppet, which was more than 1,000 feet high. Although the big guy had not moved yet, the cold and awe-inspiring presence made people feel a little breathless. Wang Lu had no doubt that even if he fought with all his strength, he would not be able to fight against this guy's little finger. Just from what he saw on the surface, this giant puppet looked clumsy, but its body was made up of countless small basic modules. These basic modules were as big as a fist, while the small ones were as thin as a grain of sand, and each module was engraved with complex and fine inscriptions. Finally, under the powerful control of the central control, a unified structure was maintained. This structure was not too novel, and Wang Lu had learned some basic knowledge in puppetry. The puppet made in this way had extremely comprehensive functions, but the flaw was that the strength of the controller's primordial spirit was extremely high. If he were to drive this thing, his primordial spirit would probably be broken by the surging torrent of signals as soon as it was connected to the control center of this big guy. However, Sun Buping would not joke about this kind of urgent matter. Therefore, Wang Lu said, give me a reasonable reason. Sun Buping said, because you have the void spirit root. Void spirit root. Wang Lu closed his eyes. This reason was really strong. One of the biggest characteristics of the void spirit root was that the entrance and exit of the Jade Mansion and the outside world were very wide, almost without any restrictions. When Wang Lu was still in the qi refining stage, he could cause the tide reaction of the surrounding spiritual energy. Now that his cultivation base had advanced to the yuanying stage, his access was probably comparable to that of an immortal. However, this meant that this thing has no requirement for the primordial spirit. There is no requirement for the strength of the primordial spirit, but the requirement for the primordial spirit is more demanding. As for the specific situation, you will know after you go up and try it. Very well, then I won't be polite. Wang Lu leaped up to a height of several hundred zhang, entered the central control room of the metal puppet, and sat on the throne in the center of the control room. Just when he was curious about the joystick and other equipment of this big guy, the door of the control room suddenly closed with a bang. From the holes on the four walls of the room, red liquid poured down like a waterfall, and soon filled the entire control room. Wang Lu seemed to understand something, but he was not in a hurry and let the liquid soak him. Before long, the red liquid filled the room. Wang Lu took a deep breath and let the liquid pour into his mouth and lungs. The next moment, Wang Lu felt that his world was fragmented. His field of vision was stretched, and the sound of the liquid rolling in his ears was distorted into strange notes. In a flash, Wang Lu's field of vision appeared a dark red low mound, and the sky above his head suddenly became a lot lower, as if it was within reach. Wang Lu felt somewhat inconceivable. After a moment of hesitation, he tried to raise his hand. Then he saw two palms shining with a metallic luster. Boom! It was as if hundreds of thunderbolts exploded in his mind at the same time, shaking him into a trance. When Wang Lu regained consciousness, he found that he was already outside the body of the puppet. Sun Buping and Tetragon were on either side of him, looking concerned. What was that just now? Wang Lu shook his head, still feeling dizzy. Fortunately, there were no other side effects. Sun Buping explained, that was a rejection reaction caused by a low synchronization rate. Synchronization rate? This puppet isn't a cold and emotionless tool, but a mystical weapon that possesses life. And if you want to control it, you need to synchronize your thoughts with it. When you can reach the point where you can connect with it and communicate with it without any hindrance, it is equivalent to you becoming its incarnation, and you will have unparalleled and powerful strength. And my so-called synchronization rate is a unit to measure the level of synchronization. Wait, this makes me feel very strange. After listening to Sun Buping's explanation, Wang Lu felt his head ache even more. Let's first confirm a few issues. First of all, driving this big guy should be quite risky, right? For example, if the synchronization rate is too low, then there is no need to say anything, but if it is too high. Sun Buping was a little surprised by Wang Lu's question. You actually thought of this step? Amazing. As you guessed, driving it is very risky. The synchronization rate is one of the important factors. If the synchronization rate is too low, you cannot use the puppet's power, but if the synchronization rate is too high, you will be assimilated by it. Because compared to it, you are really too weak. This setting is really... Wang Lu shook his head and asked, the second question, when this puppet was first created, you should have customized it for yourself, right? Sun Buping nodded. Yes, but the plan can't keep up with the changes. Although I completed it, I lost the opportunity to personally drive it. In that case, no matter how I look at it, your wife Tetragon is more suitable. She has been your husband and wife for many years, so she must understand the thinking of the big toy you created better than I do. At the same time, she is very powerful, so it will be difficult for her to be assimilated. Yes, from a steady point of view, she is more suitable than you, Sun Buping said. At the beginning, I did arrange for her to drive it. But the rejection effect is more serious than I expected. She does not have the void spirit root, and as a part of the control center in the control room, she will be bombarded by energy from all directions, so it is inevitable that she will be injured. At the same time, although she and I have become Tao companions, we are familiar with each other. But our temperaments and ideas are very different, so it is difficult to raise the synchronization rate to the highest. And the most important thing is, she has been plotted against by the darkness and has been seriously injured. There is no hope for her to recover for at least a few decades. Hearing this, Wang Lu looked at Tetragon in surprise. Only then did he realize that although she had been putting on a cool and calm posture, her condition was indeed very bad. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was covered in cuts and bruises. One of her arms was seriously burned, and one of her eyes was blind, and blood kept flowing out. Sun Buping said lightly, of course, if you really do not want to drive it, it is okay. Tetragon will persist until the end. Okay. Wang Lu waved his hand. Since we have already said this, you want me to watch a cute lowly girl die? I will drive it. By the way, let me ask you one last question. This big guy, what is its scientific name? Sun Buping said, speaking of which, I have not really considered the problem of naming it. This thing is the result of my life's blood, sweat, and tears. But more importantly, it carries the desire of countless people for victory and happiness. So I am going to name it Evangelion. Enough, change its name now. Chapter 754. Isn't the name Evangelion good? Sun Buping was a bit puzzled. On second thought, he thought that maybe there was something taboo. After all, this Evangelion was to be driven by Wang Lu. It was just a name, so he might as well listen to his opinion. If the name Evangelion is not good, this puppet is indomitable, and is the mainstay of my 9 regions against the fallen immortals. How about changing it to Optimus Prime? Next. Well, this is a divine weapon that I have sharpened for thousands of years in a desperate situation. Although I am dead, my thoughts are on it, as if I have come back from the dead. Red Lotus bathing in fire. Why don't we call it 9 regions Great Red Lotus? If it doesn't work, this thing can store the cultivator inside the body like armor. Its structure, principle, and materials are all fabricated by me, using the imaginary materialization characteristic of the group of immortal tombs. It does not exist anywhere in 9 regions, demon world, or immortal world, so it can also be called alien armor. Wang Lu finally sighed and said, Senior, please don't say any more. If you continue, you're going to completely copy the name of a series of other people. This big guy is a peerless divine weapon, so let's call it the giant divine weapon. That's too tasteless. Are you two done? How long do you want to waste on a boring naming problem? Tetragon unceremoniously interrupted Wang Lu. I'll leave this divine weapon to you. The next thing you have to do is to improve the synchronization rate as fast as possible. For you, this is a shortcut to the highest level. Don't look at Black's arrogance. As long as you can have even 50% synchronization rate, you can easily defeat it. Wang Lu did not think that this was an exaggeration. Just now he tried to synchronize with the giant divine weapon. Although he was instantly ejected because the synchronization rate was too low, it was enough for him to appreciate the surging power contained in the body of this giant divine weapon, which was beyond the limit that any immortal cultivation theory could accommodate. At that time he raised his hand. Although his hand was forcibly ejected because of insufficient synchronization rate, the next thought had already come into his mind. Raise your hand and pick the stars above your head. Because at that moment, he truly felt that the heavens and the stars were within his reach. If perfected cultivators could move mountains and fill seas, and the experts in Dixian could reverse day and night, then this giant divine weapon could move the stars. However, since it's a shortcut, it has its drawbacks. Sun Booping said, going straight to the Supreme Realm means that you will lose the opportunity to view the scenery along the way. In layman's terms, your foundation will be very unstable. Furthermore, this giant soldier god doesn't completely follow the laws of the immortal Tao. Once you completely synchronize with it, you may very well lose the chance to ascend to the immortal world forever. An unstable foundation and being unable to ascend was simply a lethal blow to a genius cultivator like Wang Lu. However, upon hearing this, Wang Lu smiled and said, it doesn't matter. In those days, great ancestor Dushing and immortal Qin ascended from Qi cultivating stage in 20 years. This speed is faster than any shortcut, and I don't see their foundation being unstable. As for ascension, I've long been uninterested in it. The fact that the immortal world could breed dregs like the fallen immortals showed that it was not a perfect blessed land. In that case, if he couldn't go, then he couldn't go. At the end of every road there would be a new scenery. Immortal cultivators could ascend to the immortal world, and demons could fall into the abyss of demon domain. Then, of course, this giant divine weapon could also find the corresponding new world. Wang Lu, who was fortunate enough to wander in the world, had deep confidence in this. Although 9 regions was vast and boundless, it was far from the whole world. Very well, it's good that you have this kind of mind. Next, let's not waste any more time. Let's start the synchronization rate training as soon as possible. Wang Lu thought about it and didn't say anything more. In fact, there were still many things in his heart at this time. For example, in the City of Immortals, had the strange poison of the fallen immortals been contained? For example, would Black, who was lured away from the mountain for unknown reasons, suddenly come back to kill them? At that time, would Tetragon and Sun Booping, who were seriously injured and a living dead, resist it? However, it was meaningless to think too much about the problem now. A low-level Yuanying stage cultivator could not play any role in this. However, a giant divine weapon with enough synchronization rate could deter the scene. Very well, what exactly should I do? Sun Booping said, first of all, you have to make yourself more like me. What kind of requirement is that? Sun Booping explained, this is good news. The giant divine weapon is a magical weapon that I built for myself at the beginning, which is almost an incarnation, so it is full of my personal characteristics. Synchronizing with it is the same as synchronizing with me. And to synchronize with me, it naturally has to be very close to me. So, combining with it is the same as combining with you? Well, if I have to say it, it's barely right. Then is it too late for me to regret it now? Yo, how come you're back so soon? Did you encounter a setback on your business trip? If you're not capable enough, you might as well change classes with me. I don't mind replacing you. In the City of Immortals, Luo Xiao looked at Black in front of him with a cynical smile. The next moment, a layer of black flame suddenly burned on his handsome face. The flame was thin, but it had great power. In an instant, the skin and flesh were scorched, revealing the pale bones. There was a subtle flame burning between Luo Xiao's eyebrows, which was the torturous fire that burned the primordial spirit. Ha 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 ha. Under the severe pain, Luo Xiao laughed wildly instead. You, this guy, have no ability to do things, but you're good at venting your anger. You've accomplished nothing, so you take pleasure in torturing your teammates. I believe Master will be very happy to see you like this. Don't threaten me with master. Black's cold and hollow voice directly exploded in Luo Zhao's mind. Master forbids killing each other, but he doesn't forbid me to deal with those traitors on his behalf. Luo Xiao, how dare you? Luo Zhao's laughter was intermittent because of the severe pain, but his insanity was more obvious. Traitor? As the mainstay of the Dixian camp, you betrayed your friends for glory in a critical battle and plotted against Sun Buping, causing him to be seriously injured. The Dixian camp suffered a great loss, which was exchanged for the dog collar and meat bone that the fallen immortal threw to you. Do you, the lowest dog, have the right to accuse me of being a traitor? What's more, both you and I have been completely corrupted by mind disorientation powder. Betrayal? Why don't you give me a demonstration first and teach me how to betray master with mind disorientation powder? Sharp-tongued. Unfortunately, no matter how extravagant your words are, you can't escape death today. With that, Black's figure suddenly flickered and instantly appeared in front of Luo Xiao. He grabbed his neck with one hand and lifted him up. However, I will give you a chance. You are obviously master's loyal dog, but you brazenly do things that harm master's interests. Tell me, how did you do it? Luo Xiao squeezed out a smile and said, harm master's interests? What a joke. I always put master's interests in the highest position. How could I harm master? I'm just doing something bad to you. As long as I get rid of you, I will take over your position, and I will only do better than you. This is the righteousness of being loyal to master, and I have a clear conscience. What a glib-tongued monk. Unfortunately, you have a crooked mind. With that, Black reached out his hand and summoned a piece of darkness, which wrapped Luo Xiao in it. Under master's ban, I can't kill you, but I will let you understand what it means to live a life worse than death. The dark world was full of infinite horror. Then Black's eyes turned to Xu Si, who was standing on the side. Would it be necessary to deal with this lackey that Luo Xiao had dug up? However, as soon as he thought about it, Black realized that there was a serious shortage of manpower on the City of Immortals side. Shi Zhijin disappeared inexplicably, and Luo Xiao was personally dealt with by him. Xu Si had become the only remaining lackey. Although Black could also try to pollute the New Nine Region's cultivators with mind disorientation powder, he didn't have that much time to waste on it. Compared with the City of Immortals, Thunder Reservoir was more important. As long as he could find Sun Buping through the flaws left by Tetragon in a hurry and eliminate him, he would undoubtedly be able to resolve a big problem in his master's heart, which could be described as a wonderful achievement. At that time, however, thinking of his master's style of doing things, Luo Xiao decided to manage things in the City of Immortals more securely, and not give his master the opportunity to punish him. Thinking of this, Black said to Xu Si, Luo Zhao's task is your task from now on. If things are delayed, Luo Zhao's fate will be your fate. After saying this threat, Black was ready to leave and return to the depths of the whirlpool of stars and Thunder Reservoir. However, just as his space transformation was activated and his figure began to flash, a dazzling sharp sword light suddenly lit up in front of him. This sword light came so suddenly that even Black didn't expect it. Caught off guard, the sword chi penetrated his body and opened a huge hole in his chest and abdomen. However, after suffering such a serious injury, Black's face was filled with a crazy smile. Good, 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 even an ant like you has become a traitor. Next, Master will realize who is really loyal to him, and who is really worthy of his attention. Although seriously injured, Black seemed to be completely unaffected. As soon as he raised his hand, a mass of darkness covered Xu Si's head. The opportunity for the emergence of this mass of darkness, as well as its own operation mode, all contained the mystery of Dixian level, which was far from what Xu Si, who had a rapid cultivation base, could resist. However, if Xu Si was really just a rapid cultivation base, how could he penetrate Black's chest and abdomen just now? The soul named Xian Yinzi had already taken over Xu Si's body and put down a key piece in this critical chess game. Fifth uncle, big move. Humph. The next moment, a dazzling sword light that was 10 times more dazzling than the previous one exploded in front of Black's eyes. It was a very familiar light. Not long ago, the avatar that he sent to lure the enemy was smashed to pieces by this light. Star-breaking sword. Chapter 755. At this moment, the dazzling sword light of the star-breaking sword bloomed in the city of immortals. The large area was filled with sword light in an instant. The high walls and domes as the boundary buzzed and trembled, as if they could crack at any time. The remaining power of this sword strike was thrilling, and the pressure faced by the one who bore the brunt could be imagined. In the blink of an eye, the dark figure had been swallowed up by the light. Xian Yinzi watched from the side and was amazed in his heart. Fifth Ant had always been famous for her weak attack and strong defense. Unexpectedly, when she went all out, the destructive power was appalling. However, if there was no such power, it would be a waste of his painstaking efforts. For Wang Wu's sword strike, Xian Yinzi really put in a lot of effort. Yin Xian took the poison not really to be a human test subject, but to hide the chess piece Xian Yinzi deeper. When he fell down, it was tantamount to disappearing from everyone's sight. People would not think that the clone named Xian Yinzi was still alive later. The development of things was slightly unexpected. The unexpected short-lived cooperation with Luo Xiao exposed the existence of Xian Yinzi in advance. However, it was only exposed in front of Luo Xiao. Xu Si, the chess piece, was still effective for black. Yin Xian set up Xian Yinzi and Xian Yinzi set up Xu Si. In the final analysis, it was for the critical moment to strike back. However, Xian Yinzi or Xu Si alone were far from enough. Therefore, he used the method of human and sword exchange to summon the Elder of Heavenly Sword Hall at the critical moment for a thunderous blow. Layers upon layers of layout were interlocked. It was unclear how much of it was due to luck that he could go all the way to the end. However, when Xian Yinzi finally saw the brilliant sword light in Wang Wu's hand, he felt that all his previous hard work was worth it. The next moment, the long-awaited collision sound rang out. Bang! Black's figure shattered. And at this time Wang Wu's blazing sword light had not even fully unfolded. However, before the sword momentum was finished, Wang Wu frowned. I've been fooled. How could Black's body be so fragile? At first, his clone was smashed to pieces after taking the full power of the star-breaking sword. There was no reason for the main body to be weaker than the clone. The star-shattering sword was indeed her strongest killing move at the moment, but she was not confident enough to think that she could defeat her opponent with a single strike. They were restraining and dragging Black away. In just a few breaths of time, a large number of reinforcements would arrive. At that time, Black would really be unable to escape. He had the advantage of time and place in Thunder Reservoir, but the City of Immortals was not necessarily his home. However, after this strike, Wang Wu realized that she had underestimated her opponent's caution. Black did not even send his main body here. Even if Luo Xiao had grasped his weakness and used the vortex of the fallen to provoke him, Black still carefully hid his true form behind the scenes, only revealing a clone. It was a disgusting move. Although this sword strike killed another of his avatars, which would inevitably affect the main body of Black, Wang Wu only felt that the situation was probably worse than before. This was because the only opportunity to kill him had been missed just like that. There would probably not be another opportunity like this in the future. The sacrifice of Luo Xiao and the exposure of Xian Yinzi were all in vain. This guy really hides his strength deeply. Wang Wu sighed and put the stellar sword that was forcibly rented into her mustard seed bag with a clear conscience. She then shrugged helplessly and said to Xian Yinzi beside her, "Next, let's see what that retarded thing Bai Zai can do." Not long ago. That's what I said. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. I have no second opinion. Now make a decision as soon as possible. With that, Bai Zai took a long breath and looked at his dozens of former comrades calmly, but his heart was still a little nervous. He knew very well how important his task was, but he really had no confidence in whether he could do it well. He had never been a person who convinced the masses with his prestige. Even when the former boss valued him and promoted him to be his deputy, the other Dixian people questioned him more than recognized him. Why did they let this idiot be their deputy? Did he deserve to be on top of us? All day long, he only knew how to say this can't be done and that can't be done. How could a braggart be qualified to be the right hand of the boss? At that time, the prestige of the boss, Sun Buping, was so high that no matter what he did, no one would question him. In contrast, all the doubts were concentrated on Bai Zai. He was really not a person who convinced the masses with his prestige. Even he himself did not feel that he was a competent deputy. He cultivated the path of negation, and indeed, he only knew how to say this can't be done and that can't be done. In such a face he himself felt ridiculous. If it weren't for the support of the boss several times, he really wanted to quit long ago. It was not that he complained, but he was worried that he would drag everyone down. This time the recovery of the group of immortals as the deputy, he should command the overall situation when the boss was not there, but he really couldn't do it. He tried to stand up, but he was soon replaced by Black and Xian Mo. Later, he was defeated by Wang Lu in the grand competition. Under the shame, Bai Zai's confidence finally collapsed. He resigned from his position and even abandoned the supreme veto power that the boss gave him. He really didn't want to make any more mistakes. After repeated defeats, Bai Zai just wanted to be free. However, now that he thought about it, that momentary freedom had actually buried the hidden danger for the subsequent changes. If it weren't for Bai Zai giving up his veto power, how could Black dare to betray him so blatantly? As long as Bai Zai still had that trump card, Black would definitely not dare to act rashly. Unfortunately, it was he who had personally opened the floodgates and released a ferocious beast. Now that he thought about it, Bai Zai really wanted to kill him. How could he be so stupid? Did the boss give him the precious veto power because he thought he was smart? Did he have any special ability? Of course not. The only reason why the boss valued him was that he was obedient enough. Simple enough. On the surface he looked like a mad dog who dared to bite anyone and would veto anyone he saw. But in the final analysis, what did he do except bark a few times? When the boss was there, Bai Zai only needed to do one thing. And the boss only hoped that he could do it well. Then he messed it up. Therefore, in the face of his own brother, Bai Zai was ashamed. His tone of speech was gentle, but his heart was sour. However, people's reaction was beyond his expectation. What's there to believe? Since you said it, of course we believe it. Luo Shui chuckled and explained to her companion behind her. When did Bai Zai lie? How could he be so clever? There was a sudden laughter from the crowd, but it soon subsided. According to you, Black is a traitor who infiltrated the fallen immortal, and Tetragon was plotted against by him and is in danger. So what should we do next? Upon hearing this, Bai Zai was stunned, and his mind was somewhat blank. Previously, he was thinking about how to win people's trust, but he didn't expect that as soon as he opened his mouth, people would believe him. And the reason seemed to be that he was stupid enough? But the problem was that he was stupid enough, but he hadn't figured out what to do next. Fortunately, it seemed that he didn't need to think too much. Luo Shui had already gone on. Now I think the most urgent thing for everyone is to go to Thunder Reservoir to help Gem. She has been shouldering too much on her own before, and we have been busy enough. Now it's time to do something. But I don't recommend going to Thunder Reservoir in such a hurry. Someone has already gone to Thunder Reservoir. Well, I know that everyone must be worried about Wang Lu, but since it's Gem's idea, we should at least trust Gem. Once upon a time, Senior Gem Emperor was the undisputed emperor among the earthly immortals, and the group of earthly immortals could only look up to her. But now Fairy Luo Shui's gem, one after another, showed that the difference in status between them was not that great. Next, we should focus on the movement of Black. Luo Shui said softly, if everything goes well on Gem's side, Black will probably be repelled soon. And the direction of his retreat is either the city of immortals or the 9 regions outside the group of immortal tombs. Therefore, we should divide our forces into 2, one to set up an array to intercept him, and the other to guard the city of immortals. What if he goes to other places in the group of immortal tombs? Someone asked. Luo Shui said, that would be him seeking his own death. There are only 2 exits from the group of immortal tombs to the outside world. The longer we guard these 2 places, the more difficult it would be for him to escape. Alright, let's hurry up and do it according to the strategy we used a long time ago. Flowing Light Group will stay here with me, while Duanyu Group will go to the entrance of the group of immortal tombs to block him. Don't let him escape. What a good Black. Everyone thinks of him as a fellow comrade, but unexpectedly, he is a cruel and unscrupulous person. At the end of her speech, the gentle Luo Shui's face turned red, her beautiful eyes widened, and an astonishing murderous aura burst out. If I don't cut him into pieces and destroy his body and soul, I swear I will not become an immortal. Humph, what a good blocking from both sides. His action is actually so fast. In the city of immortals, a shadow quietly moved. The leader is Luo Shui? Yes, that girl has always been unconvinced by Lu. Now it's a good time for her to stand up and show off. Humph, she's proficient in all kinds of arts, but she's best at scheming. Bai Zhe is also here? Ha, it seems that his stupidity has become a shortcut to gain trust. In the past, it was the same to gain trust from Sun Buping, and now it's the same to gain trust from Luo Shui. In the shadow, from time to time, there were soliloquies, but the voice was very low and could not be transmitted out of the shadow. But soon another voice came in. Listening to your tone, it's obvious that you have a deep relationship with them. How could you betray them and go to the fallen immortal? Because they are too weak and too stupid. These people can be brothers, but they can't be brothers for life. As a cultivator, what we cultivate is the immortal path, not the feelings of fellow comrade. Luo Xiao, I'll give you one last chance. Explain your betrayal clearly, and I can let you die a quick death. Black, you're at a dead end now. Why don't I give you a chance? As long as you obediently be my dog, I'll show you a way to survive. Reckless, the shadow trembled, emitting a slight fluctuation of pain and terror. Chapter 756. Black, you're already dead now. If you torture me to death, it's nothing more than a corpse and 2 lives. Why bother? Oh, are you afraid? Of course I'm afraid. I'm afraid that after all my hard work, in the end, I won't be able to achieve my full success. Luo Zhao's voice was extremely weak, but with a hint of a smile he said, Black, I'm seriously showing you a clear way. You're just a precarious ant. Do you think you're worthy of pointing the way? Why do you have to say one thing and mean another? You use torture to force me to tell you the way to disobey the will of the fallen immortals, so what are you thinking in your heart is already clear. The vortex of the fallen has been destroyed, so you can't get away with it in any case. The merits and demerits of the fallen immortals cannot offset each other. You failed to take care of the vortex of the fallen, which led to the destruction of the treasure and desecration of the fallen immortals. Basically, you're dead. Even if you make great contributions during this period and get a great reward, at most you'll be buried with you and let your funeral be glorious. You cultivate the immortal path, not the feelings of fellow soldiers, let alone the devotion to duty. So it's clear at a glance how to choose. At this point, Luo Xiao coughed a few times, but there was a faint assurance in his voice. That method is very simple, but I won't tell you for nothing. I'm afraid of death, but I'm not that afraid. At least, I'm not as afraid as you are. Black sneered and said, It's just that you haven't seen the means of living a life worse than death. If I want to die, I can die at any time. You can't stop me. Luo Xiao lightly said, You've tortured me too much, so I'll just die. In any case, you'll be buried with me. At most, I'll regret that I haven't achieved my full success. But are you willing to die like this? Black was silent. After a long time he said, I'm not willing to die, but it's even more impossible for me to bow my head to you. That's strange. Luo Xiao said, As far as I know, you shouldn't be such a person. In order to destroy the Dixian, I have been planning for 10,000 years. After several twists and turns, I am finally only one step away from success. Except for the Sun Buping, the so-called Dixian are just a motley crew. Nowadays, no one in 9 regions can stop the arrival of the upper realm. However, because of an ant like you, I failed on the verge of success and countless variables appeared out of nowhere. If I don't tear you to pieces, I won't be able to resolve the hatred in my heart, much less lower my head to you. Luo Xiao was even more puzzled. You've cultivated for so many years, yet you can't even think of something as trivial as this? It has nothing to do with my reputation. I'm not relying on Master for my own selfishness. You've ruined my plans, so I can't possibly spare your life for my own selfishness. Luo Xiao, I'm going to ask you one last time, are you going to tell me or not? Luo Xiao was already on the verge of death from the torture, but at this moment, he felt a bone-piercing chill. Black was serious. He would rather be held accountable by his master and fall into the abyss than let himself live. It's fine if you want me to tell you. But I need a trade. I need your information in exchange for my secrets. What's the use of knowing so much when you're about to die? Well, you can think of it as I don't want to die with a belly full of mysteries. Black pondered for a moment. At this time, do you still have a channel to pass the information out? But I promise you, what do you want to know? Luo Xiao smiled. Just now, you said that as long as sun booping is eliminated, no one in 9 regions can stop you. What virtue and ability does sun booping have that he alone can defeat all the heroes of 9 regions? Let's not talk about the people on our side, just Tetragon alone. Tetragon is just a little girl who borrows sun booping's prestige to deter that group of wastes. When it came to Tetragon, Black was very disapproving. Her original name is Gem. Because she was born in an imperial family, she was born with the surname Emperor. But for cultivators, what's the difference between the mortal world's emperor and a beggar? Calling her Gem Emperor is just for the sake of sun booping's face. Sun booping has always been secretly spoiling her. Dull people may not be able to see it, but those who are observant have long known that they have a husband and wife relationship. As for the word respect, it's because sun booping helped her cultivate the magical ability of all under the sky belong to the king, so her strength is transcendent. Regardless of nobility, there's still a hierarchy among cultivators. Tetragon's strength is indeed tyrannical, and she likes to be high and mighty. Thus, for the sake of sun booping's face, everyone coaxed her to be called Tetragon. So that's how it is. Unexpectedly, there's such a story behind a simple name. Luo Xiao suddenly said, therefore, although Tetragon is strong, the root of her strength is still sun booping. If sun booping dies, does that mean she's just an empty widow? Black sneered. If not, I wouldn't have rashly woken her up. She's not stupid, but she likes to think that she's smart. If she didn't wipe out the traitors with great fanfare, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to quickly clear out that group of Gisaurus, and I wouldn't have been able to lure out the ancestral dragon's guardian calf, break the ancestral dragon's fantasy world that sun booping personally laid out, and dig out the thunder reservoir from the depths of the group of immortal tombs. Tetragon is self-confident in her strength, but she doesn't know that her strength will only help me. Luo Xiao could not help but laugh in spite of himself. This kind of idiot, no wonder you don't put her in your eyes at all. Apart from Tetragon, the other people in Dixian are even less of a concern. However, 9 regions is also full of heroes. Wang Lu is very powerful. If he's given another 20 years, I'm afraid he would be another sun booping. Unfortunately, he brought about his own destruction by opening the group of immortal tombs ahead of time. Well, that's enough nonsense, right? Black lightly said. Now it's your turn to answer the question. There's indeed a lot of nonsense, but unfortunately, you haven't answered my question directly. What's so special about sun booping that you're so afraid of him? Is it just because his cultivation base is high? Can he be higher than those fallen immortals who have ascended? Or is it because of his outstanding personality? But if he's really outstanding, how could he have a traitor like you by his side? Black, as long as you answer my question, I will immediately tell you all my secrets. This time Black was silent for a long time, weighing the gains and losses in his heart. Luo Xiao's secret was very important to him, so it was worth his time to talk about it. However, at the same time, Luo Xiao's fearless posture obviously meant that he had a way to pass on the news he heard to others. Thus, the previous long speech about Tetragon seemed to say a lot, but all the key information was hidden. Unfortunately, this Baldy was not so easy to fool. It was easy to kill him, but that meant losing the secret forever. After weighing the pros and cons, Black decided to ask it, even if it would reveal the secret. Sun booping is what you call the fallen immortal. What did you say? Luo Xiao was extremely surprised. Are you kidding me? If it weren't for his identity as an immortal from the upper realm, how could he stand out among the Dixian? The Dixian companions that he has made friends with are all the top cultivators in the world, and most of their strength is about the same. This is because before the ascension, the immortal path can only accommodate so much. If he wants to go further, he can only go to the upper realm. Sun booping's strength is superior because he is a cultivator from the upper realm. Although he didn't realize it himself, whether it's cultivation or combat, his limit is different from others. That's strange. Since he is a fallen immortal, why did he organize people to resist the fallen immortals? Because his brain is broken, Black ridiculed unceremoniously. He was originally sent by the masters to come to this world with his primordial spirit. However, something went wrong in the descent ceremony. He seemed to have hit his brain and completely forgot his identity and mission. He was willing to be the son of a mortal fisherman. This is really unheard of. What happened after that? Did he not realize his identity at all? Sunbooping is not a fool. Moreover, even if he is really stupid, when he cultivated to the unity stage and began to recognize himself and trace the origin, he would always remember his previous life. He just chose to stand on your side. He would rather abandon his former fellow Taoist to stand among a group of ants. It seems that the charm of us, a group of ants, is not small. But Black, there should be something else that you haven't said, right? Even if Sunbooping really used to be one of you, he is only one of you. You at least have an absolute advantage in number. Moreover, you have defeated him once, so why do you seem to be afraid of him now? Luo Xiao asked. When Sunbooping's primordial spirit came, he once brought a fire seed with him. It is a mysterious thing that can be called the supreme thing in the immortal world. The original intention was that he could rapidly expand his power and create opportunities for his other companions. Now, it seems that it will lead to a disaster instead. Well, I've told you what you want to know. Now it's your turn. When the two made the agreement, there was an inner demon constraint, so Luo Xiao had no intention to renege on the debt. Instead, he calmly said, the secret that I can forcibly resist the effect of mind disorientation powder and disobey the will of the fallen immortals is very simple. I have the God of War blood. Before I defeat Wang Lu, no one and nothing can stop me. For this reason, I can abandon my conscience and betray 9 regions. Similarly, in order to defeat Wang Lu, I can also withstand the pressure of mind disorientation powder and do what I should do. Bloodline talent? That makes sense. Black softly pondered for a moment, and then asked, in that case, why did you betray your master? On the platform of the Wanxian League, you are doomed to be no match for Wang Lu. Only by changing sides and borrowing the power of your master can you beat him. Only by borrowing the power of the fallen immortals can I beat him? Ha 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 ha. For ordinary people, finding a backer and borrowing the might of a tiger is probably a victory, but I don't care about this kind of victory. Because I don't need anyone's help at all. I alone am enough to surpass the great cause of Wang Lu. For example, now, I have succeeded in making you fall short of success, and I have also found out the most important information. This kind of amazing achievement, even Wang Lu can only stare blankly. Speaking of which, I really want to thank you. If you hadn't mistakenly believed me and accepted me as a lackey of the fallen immortals, how could I have the chance to do such a big thing? Ha ha ha. In fact, even if you don't tell me the secret of sunbooping, I will eventually tell you the answer because you have done me a favor. Luo Xiao laughed maniacally as he spoke. Black, it's still the same sentence. I can show you a bright way. There is a way to inherit the God of War blood. As long as I give you a little bit of the blood, you can also temporarily get rid of the control of the fallen immortals. But of course you have to accept my control. But I think this business is done. At least I am a bald Zen cultivator. And I am compassionate, ha ha ha. Chapter 757. Left foot. Lift your left foot. Left, left, left. You idiot, can't you tell left from right? Swing your arm, remember to swing your arm when you lift your foot. Not like this, swing your forearm, not swing your arm. Are you swinging your arm or swinging your fist? Do you even need someone to teach you how to walk? Don't just walk with your head down. Breathe, pay attention to your breathing rhythm. Don't forget to operate the immortal spirit. Without the immortal spirit, the giant divine weapon is just an empty shell. Use your yuaning to control the immortal spirit and raise your perspective a bit higher. You're driving a giant divine weapon that surpasses the fallen immortal. Not a toy for you yuaning cultivators. Don't let your realm constrain the realm of the giant divine weapon. Feel the inside of the giant divine weapon. Resonate with it and improve the synchronization rate. Don't always impose your ideas on it. You have to figure out the basic strength and weakness. Why are you so stupid? In the Thunder Reservoir realm, a giant with a height of thousands of feet walks slowly between the mountains. Every step it took caused the earth to shake. The giant's feet were more than 100 feet long and wide. With a single step, many gentle hills were flattened. The giant could climb over a half-height mountain with just a lift of his foot. It was just that such a majestic giant seemed extremely clumsy when he walked. He staggered, sometimes his body swayed, and his center of gravity was unbalanced. There were even several times when he tripped over the rocks and fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was always a dense purple aura around the giant's body. When the giant fell, the purple aura would gather and lift it up in the air. However, every time the purple aura gathered, it would be accompanied by an earth-shattering roar. Wang Lu, do you have a brain? Such a simple action, you can't even do it once or twice. How much time are you going to waste? Damn it, don't go too far. I'm a Yuanian cultivator driving this kind of true immortal Gundam. Do you expect me to master it in one step or two? This big guy wouldn't have designed it for me. The design of the central control system reflected Sun Buping's personal interests everywhere, which was incompatible with me. Expecting me to rewrite the control system in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, and then kill the gods in front of me was just a daydream. For me to be able to do this step, it was already a heaven-shaking genius. Roaring Sulfur, what else are you not satisfied with? Roaring Sulfur? How dare you give me a nickname? Damn you, didn't you hear what I said before? Just remember a nickname? Is your brain filled with the roaring factor? As the old saying goes, if you want to chop you Apu, if you want to chop you, if you want to chop you, then chop you asterisk. Enough. Following Senior Gem Emperor's roar, a pillar of purple chi soared into the sky, dyeing half of the sky purple. I was really blind to let an idiot like you drive the giant divine weapon. Sun Buping's lifelong effort is not something that a Yuanian who has cultivated for more than 30 years can drive. I'm really stupid, really. I only thought that your realm was insufficient, but I didn't expect you to be so useless in all aspects. I in the I, comma I in I, and I and I is I. If you still want to practice with me, just follow me. If you don't want to practice, you can go to sleep. Don't disturb me. This time, Senior Gem Emperor might not have heard it, or she might have vented her anger enough, so she didn't care about Wang Lu's title of fatuous ruler. He turned his body into a purple mist and surrounded the giant divine weapon to protect it. Wang Lu sighed and inwardly thought that he was also anxious. Right now, the most important thing was to resonate with the mighty spiritual god. In the future, the heavy responsibility of maintaining the peace of 9 regions would fall on his shoulders, so why should he compete with a widow? Her husband had just died, so it was natural for her to be grumpy, not to mention that Tetragon had always been grumpy. Thus he stopped talking nonsense and began to sink his mind into the giant divine weapon. Soon he entered the state of forgetting everything. This time, perhaps because of the change in his state of mind, Wang Lu suddenly felt that the synchronization rate with the giant divine weapon was slightly improved, and the primordial spirit that was scattered in his thousands of meters body became clearer. Now, the synchronization rate should be 1 in 10,000? TSK, this progress is really difficult. From the time Sun Buping handed over the giant divine weapon to the present, 3 days had passed in the Thunder Reservoir realm. Before Sun Buping died, he used the magical power of momentary youth to distort the time in the Thunder Reservoir realm, just to leave time for Wang Lu to adapt to the giant divine weapon. However, after 3 days, even Wang Lu himself was not satisfied with the progress. After practicing in the mountains for another half a day, Wang Lu stopped, converged his mind, and slowly withdrew from the giant divine weapon. Tetragon gathered his body from the purple mist and looked at Wang Lu. He saw that his face was as pale as paper and his eyes were red. Knowing that he had really practiced to the limit, he didn't force him to continue, but just stood by without saying a word. A moment later, she somewhat blankly reached out and stroked the toe of the giant divine weapon, feeling the unique touch of the mysterious metal, and her mind was in a trance. Wang Lu turned her head and knew that Tetragon was probably thinking about Sun Buping. She previously acted tough and free, but her partner who had accompanied her for so many years just left like that. Even if she had a heart of stone, she would still tremble. In the past 3 days, not to mention tears, Tetragon's eyes didn't even turn red. It was not easy to have such a state of mind. Now it was time to rest. After thinking about this, Wang Lu no longer cared about Tetragon. Instead, he silently operated his cultivation method, and the true yuan from the four-color yuanying gushed out to moisturize his whole body. A moment later, he felt that his jade mansion was like a long drought, becoming full from the exhaustion. And at this time, Wang Lu actually didn't absorb the surrounding spiritual energy in the Thunder Reservoir realm at all. He only relied on the self-generated power of his yuanying to easily fill his jade mansion. This kind of magical effect was enough to make an ordinary cultivator's jaw drop. Cultivators often didn't count the days and months, and the process of filling his jade mansion might take several days or even months. Wang Lu was more than 10 times faster than the normal standard. On one hand, after synchronizing with the giant divine weapon of true immortal level, Wang Lu's jade mansion had a wide bridge, which naturally improved the recovery speed of his true yuan. On the other hand, the overbearing nature of the void spirit root was undoubtedly obvious. In fact, compared with other heavenly spirit root in the same stage, the void spirit root lacked that kind of outstanding characteristic. For example, Zhu Shiyao's sword spirit root ensured her invincibility in swordsmanship, and Lu Li's brilliant sword heart made her attack power superior to Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven splitting sword in the same stage. But what about Wang Lu? It seemed that he had no advantage at all. That was because since his debut, he rarely fought a protracted battle. Since he learned the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, he often ended the battle in 1 or 2 moves. It was common for ordinary cultivators, but a continuous battle was extremely rare for him. This was really the enemy's luck. Because the real strength of Wang Lu lay in the invincible endurance given to him by the void spirit root. You've recovered? Unknowingly, Tetragon came to his side. Wang Lu nodded and put on a formal smile, as if the quarrel between the two had never happened. It's over, let's prepare for the next round. Wait a minute, there's one thing. Sun Buping didn't tell you before he died, but I think it's necessary to make it clear to you. Seeing the serious look on Tetragon's face, Wang Lu also earnestly said, if it's about the risk of driving the giant divine weapon, I already know it. Tetragon was slightly stunned. You know. Synchronization is risky, so driving needs to be cautious. The gap between me and the giant divine weapon is too big. The synchronization between the two is like the heart of an ant driving an elephant. It's inconceivable and even impossible in theory. When I forcibly synchronize with the giant divine weapon with my nascent soul realm, it's like walking on a tightrope. If I'm not careful, I may be assimilated by the giant divine weapon and become an empty shell. And if I'm lucky, I'll be assimilated by the remnant consciousness left by Sun Buping in the giant divine weapon, which is equivalent to being reborn by Sun Buping, right? Tetragon didn't answer, but just looked straight at Wang Lu, his eyes blank. Tetragon had the dignity of an emperor, so he wouldn't lie or evade. But on this matter, he really had nothing to say. Instead, seeing Tetragon's serious look, Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh. Gem, what are you so nervous about? Gem is not for you to call. What else should I call you? There are only the two of us in this place, so don't put on the airs of an emperor. Wang Lu sighed and said, Sun Buping didn't tell me those things, not because he wanted to hide it from me, but because there was no need to waste time to say it. He knew that I could guess it, and he knew that I wouldn't care even if I guessed it. You don't care? What do I care about? Wang Lu laughed. Care about that little risk? Compared with the benefits of assimilating the giant divine weapon, what's the risk? Believe it or not, if this opportunity can be given to other people, the cultivators of 9 regions will fight for it. Your situation is different. Even without the giant divine weapon, you are destined to ascend, so there's no need to take this risk, Wang Lu said. Do you have to be so careful? I did suffer a lot. However, compared with what Sun Buping has done, do you think this kind of loss is worthy of mentioning? Before Sun Buping died, he had a long talk with Wang Lu, entrusted the giant divine weapon, and also told him more important secrets about himself. Tetragon was naturally listening. When he heard that Sun Buping even said that thing, but didn't remind Wang Lu of the risk of driving the giant divine weapon, he felt strange. Sun Buping is indeed a great person. I used to be arrogant and thought that no one in the world could compare to me, but after I met Sun Buping, Tetragon said and shook his head with a chuckle. He's really great. Even without that identity, he must be the top person in 9 regions. How could a person who can ascend be a simple person? Wang Lu echoed, and then said, Senior Sun Buping has already paved the way for me to this step. I don't want to be illuminated by his light as if I don't exist. If he can do it, of course I can. With that, seeing that Tetragon seemed to disagree, he added, if not, Sun Buping would not choose me as his successor. Successor. Hearing these 3 words, Tetragon looked a lot more solemn. Chapter 758. Hearing Wang Lu mention the successor, Tetragon finally realized that Sun Buping had really left her. The tyrant who would yell at her, scold her, and suppress her with irresistible power when she was impulsive would never come back. The gentle lover who would care for her, dote on her, and do everything silently would never come back. The indomitable man who even the fallen immortals could not defeat, finally really fell. The emotion called sadness flashed through Tetragon's heart. The woman quickly calmed her mind and pressed her thoughts of Sun Buping to the bottom of her heart. Yes, Sun Buping does regard you as his successor. He entrusted everything to you, and he also saw that you have the same precious characteristics as him. You're just like him, you don't know life from death. Senior Gem Emperor laughed coldly, but there was no sadness in her laughter. But you can't win just by relying on reckless impulsiveness. You have to work harder to survive in the midst of death. Wang Lu was silent for a moment. I know that even without you saying it, but I'm afraid you still don't know that the giant divine weapon is the culmination of his life's work. This is not just the literal meaning. Sun Buping left everything of himself in the giant divine weapon, including the cultivation method he cultivated, the immortal tools he once cherished, and even the memories he did not want to forget. If you can't fully synchronize with the giant divine weapon in a short time, you might as well take a few more steps. With that, Tetragon split into a cloud of dense purple gas, which enveloped the giant divine weapon. Wang Lu was stunned when he heard this, but he was inspired by Tetragon's words. I see. This time I'll try to synchronize in another way. In the Thunder Reservoir realm, there was the moment of brilliance released by Sun Buping before his death. One day outside the realm was 1 year in the realm. It had been exactly a year since Wang Lu entered the Colossus for the first time. Over the past year, his life had been as regular as a machine. There were 24 hours in a day, and 24 hours were spent on piloting the Colossus. 12 hours were spent on resonating with the Colossus, and 10 hours were spent on familiarizing himself with the operation. The last hour was the time for him to restore the true Yuan in his Jade Mansion. This was a real sleepless night. During this period, Wang Lu did not distract himself from doing anything else except occasionally talking to Senior Gem Emperor. However, after a year the progress was not satisfactory. 2%. This is the result of a year of hard work? In the face of Tetragon's doubts, Wang Lu had nothing to say. It was too slow. In a year, the synchronization rate had barely exceeded 1%. Wouldn't it take 100 years for the synchronization rate to reach 100%? What's more, the synchronization rate didn't increase linearly. The later it was, the more difficult it was to increase it. Wang Lu roughly listed a model and calculated it. If he couldn't make any fundamental breakthrough, it would take at least 3,000 years of painstaking work to completely master the Colossus divine weapon. Unfortunately, not to mention 3,000 years, even 3 years was very difficult. Sun Buping's momentary brilliance magical power was not permanent. Before his death, he was like a lamp that had run out of oil, so how could he spare the strength to release the great magical power? The effect of time distortion could only last for 3 years at most. At that time, the Thunder Reservoir realm would collapse. Even if Tetragon recovered from his injury and could use the Emperor magical power, he couldn't save the collapse of time. Now, 1/3 of the momentary brilliance had passed. In the remaining 2 years, Wang Lu had to push the synchronization rate to more than 20%. 20%. This was the bottom line figure that Tetragon calculated to suppress Black, after a preliminary assessment of the power of the Colossus divine weapon. If he couldn't reach this number, then Wang Lu didn't even have a full chance of winning against Black. If anything unexpected happened, he could only play the role of cannon fodder. Compared to the bottom line requirement of 20% in 3 years, 2% in 1 year was, of course, ridiculously slow. However, even the hot-tempered Tetragon couldn't lose her temper at this time, because she knew very well that Wang Lu had really tried his best. In the past year, Wang Lu had basically risked his life. Every time he piloted the Colossus Divine Weapon, he pushed the strength of the resonance to above the limit. It could be said that he was dancing on the tip of a needle, and a little carelessness would cause his primordial spirit to collapse. On the other hand, Wang Lu didn't only know how to put in effort foolishly. He would constantly adjust his resonance method according to the changes in the situation. The complexity of his methods and patterns were really eye-opening. In the meantime, Wang Lu also asked Tetragon for advice on an ancient cultivation technique to temper the primordial spirit, so that he could better adapt to the needs of resonance. Wang Lu was undoubtedly a talented cultivator. When Tetragon mastered the cultivation technique to temper the primordial spirit, it took him half a year at the peak of the divinity transformation stage. Wang Lu picked it up in 3 days and mastered it in half a month. The speed of his progress was unimaginably fast, and Tetragon was really ashamed of his inferiority. Then, since Wang Lu was impeccable both in terms of effort and talent, the slow progress could only be attributed to the Colossus Divine Weapon being too difficult to control. Tetragon had once achieved resonance with the Colossus Divine Weapon while he was temporarily suppressing his injuries. He thought that if Wang Lu couldn't do it, he might as well take the place himself. However, Tetragon only resonated with the Colossus Divine Weapon for less than 10 minutes before his immortal spirit flowed in reverse, and his injuries relapsed. He almost collapsed on the spot, and the synchronization rate in exchange for such a price was not even 1 in 10,000. She had the strength to be at the top of the Dixian, and she was Sun Buping's Taoist partner. They had been in love and accompanying each other for many years, but her efficiency couldn't be compared with Wang Lu's. She really couldn't blame Wang Lu for anything. It doesn't matter. There are still 2 years. A miracle is bound to happen. Wang Lu's calm voice comforted Tetragon, which made the latter feel even more ridiculous. Since when did the dignified king of Dixian need the comfort of a nascent soul cultivator? However, after hearing his words, she unbelievably calmed down. Raising her head and looking up at the Colossus Divine Weapon that reached the clouds, Tetragon suddenly thought of a problem. The Colossus Divine Weapon was so difficult to control. Others might not know, but Sun Buping himself should know. After all, this big guy was personally built by him, and every detail was imprinted in his mind. Then, he should also know that it was impossible to achieve a synchronization rate of 20% in 3 years. Knowing that it was impossible, he threw all this to her and Wang Lu. What was his intention? If there was a special trick to synchronizing with the Colossus Divine Weapon that could greatly increase Wang Lu's efficiency, why didn't he say it before he died? This question quickly attracted Senior Gem Emperor's attention. Unknowingly, time passed quietly. After an unknown period of time, Tetragon suddenly heard Wang Lu's complaint. This synchronization is really getting harder and harder. Although Old Sun and I have some similarities in personality, the key to synchronization is that the two of us have the same experience and memories. Our living environment and growth experience are too different. This road of resonance is really full of thorns. TSK, I better find a way to experience Old Sun's experience personally. When Tetragon heard this, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Unfortunately, that light flashed and disappeared. When Tetragon reached out his hand, it was already quiet. Gem, after thinking about it, I'm afraid I need to simulate the scene. Gem, are you listening? Tetragon was stunned for a moment and did not react. Wang Lu waved his hand in front of her. Gem, don't sleep, I'm asking you something serious. Yes, I'm listening. Tetragon nodded, as if the distraction just now was just an illusion of Wang Lu. Wang Lu smiled and asked, do you have a way to simulate a scene here? Scenario simulation? Yes, it's best if it's a relatively important event in Old Sun's life. The more similar the better. I'll try to be in his shoes and get a resonance. Important event in his life? When Tetragon heard these words, the light that had disappeared finally came back. So that's how it is. There is indeed a trick to quickly increase the synchronization rate. But no wonder you refused to say it even when you died. Booping, you really gave me a big problem. Forget it, there are still 2 years anyway, no need to rush. I've rested enough, I'll go drive a Gundam for a while to practice. You've been injured repeatedly recently, so don't force yourself to use the purple gas to protect me. Although the synchronization rate is only 1%, at least it's more than enough for daily walking. Just do whatever you want. As Wang Lu spoke, he turned into a stream of light and entered the body of the giant god soldier. However, just as he sat down on the throne, he suddenly saw darkness. The light in the core control room was suppressed by an unknown force and completely extinguished. Wang Lu was shocked. He guessed that his continuous high-intensity operation for a year had caused the big guy to malfunction. This was very troublesome. 1% synchronization rate was only enough for him to drive the giant god soldier for daily walking, but it was far from enough for him to analyze the internal operating mechanism and repair the malfunction. Once something happened to the big guy, he wouldn't be able to fix it even if he wanted to. However, the next moment, a familiar voice sounded beside his ear. It's me. Gem? Why are you here? When synchronizing with the giant god soldier, the control room could only accommodate 1 person at most. If there was one more person, the primordial spirit would be greatly disturbed. Don't ask and don't look. Just sit down and leave the rest to me. What? However, before Wang Lu could react, a rustling sound of clothes rubbing against each other made him horrified. Wang Lu was, after all, Wang Lu. His quick thinking allowed him to guess Tetragon's plan immediately. You're crazy. Before he finished his sentence, Wang Lu felt his whole body go numb, and he couldn't say a word. Don't talk. A warm, smooth and slightly trembling hand touched Wang Lu's face, then along his cheeks, neck, deep into his clothes, touching his broad chest, and all the way down. Leave everything to me. A soft and fragrant body gently fell into Wang Lu's arms. Remember everything and then forget it. Do you understand? Wang Lu was silent for a long time and then gently nodded. Chapter 759. Good, the left arm is connected, and the immortal spirit is flowing smoothly. This meridian is considered complete. After that, you should be able to use the immortal formation engraved on the mighty miracle god's left arm. There is still half a year left. Try to master 3 of the 5 commonly used great immortal techniques. In this way, even if you fight against the top Dixian, you will have a 50% chance of winning. In the Thunder Reservoir realm, Tetragon gave a positive evaluation of Wang Lu's progress for the first time. This was the first time in more than 2 years, and Wang Lu was quite surprised. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the woman's figure swayed and she fell from the sky. Halfway, a palm more than 1,000 feet long and wide caught her gently, as if holding a cotton ball, and gently placed her on the ground. A moment later, the mighty miracle god's chest was opened, and Wang Lu rode the immortal sword Rouge Tears inside at the unconscious Tetragon. Why bother showing off? Not long ago, in order to test Wang Lu's synchronization progress, Tetragon proposed a real battle. Between the two of them, one had yet to recover from his injuries, and the other's synchronization rate was only 15%. On paper, their strength was about the same, and there were not many accidents in the actual battle. The two of them were evenly matched. However, after a long battle, Tetragon was ultimately affected by his injuries. He could not react in time, and was hit by the giant soldier god's left fist. He flew backward for 100 miles, smashing through 7 or 8 mountains in a row before stopping. After that, although Tetragon quickly returned to the battlefield, he no longer had the strength to fight. He barely praised Wang Lu and then fainted. After Tetragon fell, Wang Lu did not have the intention to continue to drive the giant soldier god to resonate with it. After retreating from the giant soldier god, he paced a few steps on the spot, looking at Tetragon from time to time. There were several times when he wanted to step forward, but he always retreated halfway. Such hesitation was extremely rare for Wang Lu, but he had his reasons for hesitation. Not long after, Tetragon slowly woke up. Seeing Wang Lu standing at the side, he couldn't help but frown. Why are you standing here? Wang Lu shrugged. Thinking about life. Don't waste time doing pointless things. Every minute that we have right now is something that Sunbooping has fought for with his life. Tetragon sighed. He endured the pain of the immortal spirit reversal in his body. He stood up and summoned the Emperor Purple Chi. Again. This special training lasted for a full 5 days. In the meantime, Wang Lu had been triggering the resonance inside the Colossus non-stop, and every bit of his spiritual gas had been exploited to the maximum. The 5-colored nascent soul was flickering, showing signs of collapse. His soul core was even more unable to bear the burden, causing Wang Lu's head to ache like it was splitting apart at all times, and it was an unbearable torture. However, all this was nothing compared to the pressure that Tetragon had to bear. In the past 2 years, she had not recovered from the injury caused by Black Sneak attack. Moreover, she had to squeeze her physical strength and undergo the special training of Wang Lu, which had already made her body a mess. After 5 days of special training, Tetragon, as expected, fainted again. And this time Wang Lu once again fell into the confusion of thinking about life, and the time was much longer. In fact, since that wonderful night a year and a half ago, Wang Lu had often been lost in thought. He was thinking about such a question. What exactly happened that night? Wang Lu's memory had always been good. After a few decades, he still remembered every scene that happened when he first entered the Spirit Sword Mountain. He also remembered how many spirit stones Wang Wu owed him over the years, and how many empty promises. He was talented and had a photographic memory. He could remember more than 80% of an immortal array diagram that was enough to make the primordial spirit of a Taoist master of Yuanying stage collapse at a glance. However, Wang Lu could not remember what happened in that dark control room a year and a half ago. The clear memory only lasted until the sentence, "Remember all this and then forget it, understand?" What happened after that, Wang Lu really couldn't remember. He only remembered that he seemed to have an epiphany overnight, and his synchronization rate with the giant divine weapon skyrocketed. Moreover, for a period of time after that, his synchronization rate skyrocketed every day. The key turning point, of course, was that night. Unfortunately, Wang Lu's memory was limited, and when he checked himself afterward, there was no other change except for the skyrocketing synchronization rate. He did not practice any virgin skill. His innate Yuanyang Qi had long been refined into the sword Qi. Whether it was virgin skill or 10,000 people kill, it made no difference to him. However, even if there was no change in his body, what happened that night from a common sense point of view was already clear at a glance. However, wasn't it a bit ridiculous to use common sense to figure out Tetragon? Wang Lu's hesitation was precisely here. According to the general situation, what Tetragon did was nothing more than to have sex with Wang Lu, so as to bring him into the role of Sunbooping and resonate with the giant divine weapon. However, would the truth be so simple? Wasn't there a second possibility? Of course there was. Wang Lu could easily think of a dozen possibilities. For example, she was just trying to deceive him into thinking that he had sex with her, and using the power of fantasy to achieve a breakthrough. Of course, as Tetragon, it seemed a bit degrading to play such tricks, but it was still better than really rolling in the sheets with a person he had no feelings for, right? Another example was that Tetragon might have only used his dexterous hands, and did not cross the critical threshold. And another example, on the other hand, could it be certain that Tetragon did not have sex with him? Probably not. There were too many possibilities so that Wang Lu could not determine the truth of that night. Maybe he did, maybe he did not. The only person who could tell the truth was Tetragon herself. As long as she did not say anything, anything was possible. This reminded Wang Lu of a cat locked in a box. That magical cat had the two attributes of life and death at the same time, which was the most mysterious. And Wang Lu felt that he was like that cat. Before the box was opened, he had the two attributes of virginity and non-virginity at the same time. Of course, in view of the fermented roasted chicken incident when he returned from the expedition to the Western continent, it seemed a bit inappropriate to use virginity to describe it, but that was the general meaning. Because of Tetragon's one-night action, Wang Lu now had the most magical chastity in 9 regions, which existed and did not exist at the same time. Thinking about it made people's brains burn. What are you thinking about? After a long time, Tetragon's cold voice came into his ears. Wang Lu smiled bitterly. Thinking about you. I'm right in front of you. What's there to think about? Don't waste time doing stupid things. Your progress is not optimistic enough to indulge. Looking at the serious look of Tetragon, Wang Lu could not see the slightest different emotion from her eyes. Sure enough, his bold test had no result. Forget it, now is not the time to care about chastity. Let's start the giant divine weapon first. Wang Wu, what are you doing? Thinking about life. In the city of immortals, the second elder of the Heavenly Sword Hall of Lingjian School questioned the woman in white in front of him. Thinking about life? You have so much work to do now, how can you have the time to think about life? Wang Wu calmly and confidently replied, if I don't sweep the house, how can I sweep the world? If I can't even figure out my own life, how can I decide other people's lives? It's because I have a lot of work to do that I have to think about my own life carefully. Only after thinking about it clearly can I start to work. Lucien frowned and said, where did you learn this shameless line? I don't want to talk nonsense with you. There are still the last 2 batches of injured people in Immortal 1 area. Deal with them as soon as possible. Wang Wu wrinkled her nose and said, why? Previously, I worked overtime to detoxify the people from those famous sects, but I didn't even get a little gratitude. Now that I'm off work and thinking about life, who cares about those poison people? Can you not talk nonsense with your eyes open? After you removed the poison from the lead disciples of those sects, they thanked you profusely. What kind of thanks are empty words? Wang Wu curled her lips in dissatisfaction and said, at least take out the public treasury of the sect and let me have a look at it. Do you think I can get an immortal treasure by kowtowing a few times? Wang Wu, if you want to plunder in this kind of thing, what kind of reputation do you think you will have? Senior brother, think about it. If I can take this opportunity to make a fortune, how big of a family business can I get? I wonder, are you really that short of money? Yes. Wang Wu replied seriously, I'm really short of money. Senior brother, you have no idea how many people I have to support. All these years, I've only seen you running around alone. How many people do you have to support? Your only disciple is one of the most profitable cultivators in the world. Forget it, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. If you don't want to do it, I can find someone else. Where is Immortal Yunhe? Wang Wu was silent for a long time and said with a smile, Immortal Yunhe went back. Went back? At this time? Lucien was a little surprised. In his impression, Li Yunhe was a rare person who knew the big picture and etiquette. How could she go back at this time? Thinking of Immortal Yunhe's graceful bearing, Lucien felt lost and said, alas, why did she go back? Of course she had to go back when she encountered force majeure. Well, senior brother, don't waste my time here. I will go back to work after thinking about life. As for those who are poisoned, let them wait patiently, they won't die so easily. When Lucien had no choice but to leave, Wang Wu smiled, slowly raised her head, and whispered softly, there's one less person to support. I don't know how many more there will be. After so many years of financial burden, it's finally expected to be reduced a little. That batch just now is the last? Reporting back to Elder, the cultivators of Goat Horn Mountain are the last. After Taoist Master Nanfei's dealt with their poison, there should be no new poison around the city of immortals. Good, we finally ended a disaster. This fallen immortals move is really extraordinary. It almost forced us to completely collapse. Elder, there's one thing Disciple doesn't understand. At first, no one could detoxify this strange poison of the fallen immortal. Later, a Taoist Master Yunhe suddenly appeared and easily detoxified the poison that all the Supremes were helpless against. Later, Taoist Master Yunhe inexplicably wanted to go on a long journey, saying that she taught the detoxification method to Taoist Master Nanfei's. No matter how I think about it, I feel that it's not natural. Humph, so what if it's not natural? Are you going to ask Taoist Master Nanfei's for an explanation? Without her help, you would have been a dead man. It's not that Disciple doesn't appreciate Taoist Master Nanfei's kindness, I just think that things are a bit strange. Whether it's strange or not, now is not the time to think about it. You don't think that the fallen immortals only have one move, do you? Huh, Elder, you mean? According to the latest calculation of Supreme Tianluan, the next step of the fallen immortals will soon come. The fallen immortals will come soon. In the darkness, a cold voice leisurely sounded. Chapter 760. The fallen immortals are coming soon? In the darkness, Black's words were earth-shattering. Luo Zhao's primordial spirit trembled and was extremely shocked. He repeated the sentence to make sure that he didn't hear it wrong. As a result, he only heard Black's disdainful laughter. Heh. After the shock, Luo Zhao began to think about the meaning behind this sentence, but he didn't know where to sort it out. After a long silence, Luo Zhao finally couldn't calm down and asked in a deep voice, "Why?" Of course he had a reason to ask why. He had worked hard and sacrificed everything he had to finally break the nail in Black. He thought that he had made a great contribution and greatly slowed down the progress of the arrival of the fallen immortals. Who knew that in exchange for such a sentence from Black, the fallen immortals were coming soon? Why? The early arrangement of the fallen immortals in the City of Immortals was basically broken. The mind disorientation powder was solved, the vortex of the fallen was destroyed, and Black was trapped here. They were already at their wits' end, so why could they come to 9 regions soon? Because I failed, of course they will come in person. Black said lightly, but every word he said was like a heavy hammer that hit Luo Zhao's heart. You failed, so they will come in person? Black sneered and said, what else? What do you think will happen? After I, the strongest chess piece, have been knocked out, the fallen immortals have no choice. Either they come in person or they give up their plan to come here and let you, a group of ants, celebrate. Which one do you think they will choose? Luo Zhao was tongue-tied. His body could not help but shake, and his mouth was full of bitterness. He wanted to point at Black's nose and scold him for talking nonsense and absurdity, but every word of Black's was so logical that it was completely impossible to refute. Yes, since all the chess pieces in his hand were wasted, of course the chess player could only go to the battlefield in person. Why didn't he think of such a simple truth before? Thinking of this, Luo Zhao's thoughts became more and more chaotic. He had thought that this would be an unparalleled achievement, enough to support him to suppress Wang Lu, but he did not expect that it would cause such a great disaster. Perhaps the reason why Wang Lu didn't kill Black wasn't because he didn't have a way, but because he had already seen through this, so he would rather use a more gentle method to stall for time? Just like what he did at the opening ceremony of the grand competition. As for him, he who fancied himself clever, had dragged the entire 9 regions into the abyss. The more he thought about it, the colder Luo Zhao felt his entire body go cold. His heart seemed as if it was struck by a sledgehammer, and it painfully constricted. The glow of his soul core flickered, and it displayed that his mental state was already extremely unstable. However, just before he collapsed, a fire snake swept over and swept away his chaotic thoughts. What replaced it was a vigorous fighting spirit. Damn it, so what if the fallen immortals come? If they can come here without the guidance of the chess pieces from the lower realm, then the fallen immortals will come sooner or later. The result will be the same whether I do it or not. No, cutting off their chess pieces will disrupt their rhythm in any case. Perhaps they can come ahead of time, but it's better to do it in a hurry than to wait for them to come after they're ready. Yes, if they can come to 9 regions at will, why would they need to support their chess pieces? Wouldn't it be better to do it themselves? There must be great obstacles in the passage between the 2 realms, which will lead to various restrictions when they come. In that case, I don't need to feel guilty at all, because I didn't do anything wrong. So what if the fallen immortals come ahead of time? I can subdue Black, so I can subdue the fallen immortals. Ha, if I can subdue a fallen immortal dog, let alone Wang Lu, even if it's Hichu Daoren, so what? Yes, the next target is that fallen immortal who doesn't have eyes. Thinking of this, the flames in Luo Zhao's eyes almost gushed out. In this regard, Black smiled slightly and said, "It seems that you haven't been scared to death." Upon hearing this, Luo Zhao's heart suddenly turned cold. You've said so much to me, but what you've done seems to be a bit beyond your duty, right? Black said, so, let me ask you one last time, are you ready for your god of war blood? Luo Zhao was stunned, and then burst into a crazy laughter. Wang Lu, what are you going to do next? Yes, what should I do next? Wang Lu sighed and drove the giant divine weapon to sit down on the top of the mountain, which made a slight vibration. A few months ago, this was completely impossible to do. Once the 1,000-feet-tall giant sat down, no mountain could bear its weight. The mountains collapsed, the earth split, and it was a scene of destruction. However, after a few months, there was no longer that giant in the Thunder Reservoir realm. Now, sitting on the top of the mountain was a giant puppet that was 200 feet long. Although it was still huge and burly compared to the child-faced woman beside the puppet, it was no longer that bulky appearance that made it hard for the world to contain it. This was, of course, thanks to the improvement of the synchronization rate. When the synchronization rate reached 20%, Wang Lu could finally fully control this powerful puppet and freely use most of its functions and magical abilities, including the enlargement and shrinkage of the puppet. The 1,000-feet-tall giant was only the original form. With the adjustment of the internal structure and the activation of the array, the giant divine weapon could be extended by another 100 times, becoming a terrible war machine comparable to the size of Gisaurus. It could also shrink by 100 times, becoming the size of a normal person. Of course, this step was not yet possible for Wang Lu. The giant divine weapon that Sun Buping built for 10,000 years contained trillions of small metal cubes, each of which was engraved with tens of thousands of glyphs. It was not easy to compress such a huge basic structure as a whole. On the other hand, if it could be done, it meant that Wang Lu had an incredibly powerful war machine. To compress the power of the 1,000-feet-tall giant into 1 meter, the combination of agility and explosive power was probably enough to surpass any cultivator in 9 regions. However, to do that, the synchronization rate must at least exceed 40%. Judging from the current progress, although it could not be said to be far away, there was still a long way to go. Thinking about the road in the future, Wang Lu drove the giant divine weapon and was silent on the top of the mountain. Tetragon, who was beside him, asked, "In 3 days, Thunder Reservoir will fall apart. At that time, it is likely that we will be intercepted by Black as soon as we go out. Are you ready to fight now?" "I can fight at any time, but I don't think he will come. That guy has been lurking around you and Sun Buping for so long, so he should have this little bit of cleverness. He can't stop Sun Buping from choosing his successor, so he should have guessed what kind of opponent he will face when we meet again." Tetragon somewhat regretfully said, "Yes, if it weren't for my injury, I would not lose to him alone." Previously, she was seriously injured by Black in Thunder Reservoir, which had always been a stain on Tetragon's mind. The opponent was obviously far inferior to her in strength, but he took advantage of her carelessness and caused her serious injury that could not be healed for several years. "Since he won't come here, will there be any problems in the City of Immortals?" "Don't worry, since that guy Wang Wu has followed him, there will be no problem. You do trust her?" In her opinion, at least half of the property in the entire City of Immortals should belong to her. How could she allow a mere lackey of the fallen immortal to destroy all of this? Believe me, when it comes to protecting wealth, she is basically invincible. "But I have a hunch," Wang Lu said and drove the giant divine weapon to stand up. The hundreds of millions of cubes on its body rotated at the same time, and began to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy and release the immortal spirit. "What hunch? When we go out this time, I'm afraid we will meet a stronger opponent than Black." Think about it. As a chess piece in the hands of the fallen immortals, Black's most important task should be to prevent the resurrection of Sun Buping. But now he has failed on the verge of success. As a chess piece, he has no value. Tetragon didn't respond. So what? That means that either the fallen immortals change to a more powerful chess piece, or it's time for those chess players to play in person. Impossible. Tetragon said decisively, "At that time we desperately closed the passage between the 2 worlds. It's not so easy to open it." But in fact, that passage has been opened a long time ago. Wang Lu was a little surprised and said, "Didn't I tell you the story of the golden generation of Lingjian school?" "Yes, you did, but..." Tetragon shook his head and said, "I don't think it's really the fallen immortals. You haven't seen the real fallen immortals, so you don't understand how powerful the other party is. If it's really the fallen immortals, it's impossible for your golden generation to survive. With the current power of 9 regions, Any fallen immortal can sweep the continent and be invincible. Wang Lu didn't bother to explain to her how many things happened that year and said, "Think whatever you want." However, even if it's not the real fallen immortal, it's at least an exceptionally powerful chess piece. For them to be able to lay such a chess piece in 9 regions, it seems that the passage between the 2 worlds is indeed in jeopardy. Tetragon said and then stood up. "After I go out, I'm going to find time to patrol for 9 weeks and reinforce the seal." "Alright, after we go out, if there's a chance, I'll try to reinforce the seal first, although I doubt that it's meaningful to do so." 3 days later, the magical ability of momentary youth disappeared, and the distorted time and space backtracked, which instantly crushed the entire Thunder Reservoir realm. Wang Lu and Tetragon left the Thunder Reservoir realm smoothly through the gap of time and space, and came to the vast sea of stars. The starlight around them was still the same. It seemed that there was no change from 3 years ago. In fact, of course not. They had been in the Thunder Reservoir realm for 3 years, but only 3 days had passed in the outside world. 3 days was not enough to change too many things, but it was enough for 9 regions to welcome an uninvited guest. In the bitter cold land of the far north, a shadow quietly descended. "Useless waste, I actually have to do it myself. Thank you for Satsujinki's floating red reward. May Day is coming. I wish everyone a happy holiday in advance." Chapter 761. Humph, it's this hypocritical peace carnival again. On an inconspicuous narrow street in the B7 area of the City of Immortals, Luo Xiao was wearing a heavy cloak, which completely concealed his figure and appearance. In the hustle and bustle of the city, he turned into a silent passerby and watched the grand ceremony of the City of Immortals with cold eyes. Since the establishment of the city, there have been countless kinds of ceremonies. In the grand competition, the Wanxian League naturally needed to celebrate its big victory, small victory, and even undefeated victory. In addition to the contestants who needed to prepare for the competition, most of the other people who came to the City of Immortals to watch the competition spent their time in various celebrations. In this regard, many people expressed considerable concern. The cultivators did not cultivate and did not do production. Every day, they watched the competition in the City of Immortals, reveled, and indulged in luxury, which was quite unfavorable to the overall development of the immortal cultivation world. However, the organizing committee claimed that when the immortal cultivation world developed to a certain stage, the proportion of the entertainment industry would naturally exceed the material production. To this end, the organizing committee also hired many highly respected experts and scholars in the immortal cultivation world to write articles to prove it. The structure was clear and organized, and all kinds of data were very detailed, which made people unable to refute it. Thus, this view was gradually accepted by the mainstream, and people began to indulge in the celebration again and again with a clear conscience. However, this continuous carnival was, after all, a distorted phenomenon. It was not difficult for people with insight to see that people's need for carnival reflected their lack of confidence in reality and worry about the future. It was precisely because everyone felt that the Wanxian League was weaker than the Dixian League that they rejoiced in every victory. At the same time, it was also because people understood that regardless of the outcome of the grand competition, they would face a more terrifying opponent. Therefore, it was not a bad choice to get drunk today. Therefore, when he saw the wave of carnival in the City of Immortals again, Luo Xiao felt full of irony. Did these ignorant ants realize that while they were cheering, a shadow that could shroud the entire 9 regions had quietly descended? Did they realize that perhaps the entire immortal cultivation world of 9 regions was about to end? For ants, even if they work hard to cultivate, they are still ants. So no matter what they do, it doesn't matter. Just as Luo Xiao was deep in thought, a vague voice came from his feet. It was a black dog with an ugly appearance, and its fur was covered in dust. It looked very dirty. However, a fierce look flashed across its eyes from time to time, showing that it was different from the others. Of course it was different. After all, not all black dogs had the identity of an earth immortal. Hearing its voice, Luo Xiao sighed. Sometimes I really wonder if you Dixian people even have such a thing as dignity? Dignity? Only the living deserve to talk about dignity, the dead are just corpses. So, in order to save your dog life, you really became my dog? TSK, when I said that if you want the god of war blood, you'd have to be my dog obediently, it was just a casual remark. I didn't expect you to actually follow my words literally. I really admire you for going this far just to drag out an ignoble existence. In order to drag out an ignoble existence, I have done more shameful things. What else can you expect from a person who can betray his former companions? It was obviously a self-deprecating remark, but when it came out from the black dog's mouth, it made people feel a strong sense of irony. Luo Xiao narrowed his eyes and decided to give up this kind of argument with it and walked in silence. The two of them walked around the streets of B7 area for a long time. It was not until many cultivators began to be curious about the man and the dog that they moved their position and continued to walk in a low-key manner in the nearby urban area. It was just that. The scene of one man and one dog walking side by side made Luo Xiao particularly depressed. How long do we have to wait? Until the other party gives up looking for us, Black said flatly. Those who are completely swallowed by mind disorientation powder are equivalent to handing over their lives. The fallen immortal can easily track our position and control our words and deeds. Even if you use the god of war blood to offset the effect of mind disorientation powder, there will inevitably be omissions. Now we have to use the chaotic aura of the City of Immortals to cover up our own aura. I hope we won't be found by that person. That person is irritable and impatient, so he won't spend too much time looking for us, the two defeated generals. But on the other hand, if he finds us, you and I will die without a burial place. Luo Xiao shook his head and said, How sure are you about the fallen immortal coming to the lower realm? Is it possible that you're mistaken? Stupid question. Although Black had been reduced to being a dog for Luo Xiao, it obviously had no respect for the dog owner. So, if he can't find us, what will he do next? Black was silent for a moment and said, He will recover his strength first. Right now, the passage between the two realms has not been completely opened. The fallen immortal needs to pay a great price to descend, and his strength will be consumed rapidly. Moreover, because the laws of 9 regions are different, the fallen immortal in the lower realm needs a certain amount of time to adapt. For him, the best choice is to find chess pieces like you and me and swallow them into his body, which can greatly speed up the recovery of his strength. But even if he doesn't find us with his own ability, he can restore his true immortal strength in about 10 days. In other words, there are only 10 days left for us? It's not necessarily just the time left for us. Black said, I tried to strangle Sun Booping in Thunder Reservoir Realm but failed on the verge of success. Maybe there are some changes over there. We might as well leave the exploration to them. We just need to hide behind the scenes and make our move at the critical time. Wang Lu. Luo Xiao's face turned very ugly. Black, you share my god of war blood. So you should know that Wang Lu is not only my enemy, but also yours. If he is allowed to establish an unsurpassable merit, the god of war blood will bite back, and neither of us will survive. Don't worry, he can't do it. The one who descended is the Kanglin immortal, who has touched the heavenly realm. In 9 regions he is absolutely invincible. The only flaw is only known by his companions. Luo Xiao was very keenly aware of the faulty wording in this sentence and said, Listening to you, you know his flaw? That's strange. Can a running dog like you be considered as a companion of the fallen immortal? Of course I don't know, but I at least know that the invincible Kanglin immortal also has a flaw. As long as there is a flaw, we can try to find it. Of course, what we need most now is to stay dormant, so looking for the flaw has to be done by someone else. Upon hearing this, Luo Xiao suddenly understood and said, Someone else, you mean Wang Lu? You want to use him to explore the way? Then you, a senior running dog, can take advantage of knowing the fallen immortal better, find out the other party's flaw first, and finally make a critical blow? That's a good idea. Then the question now is, how do we tell Wang Lu about the arrival of the fallen immortal without exposing our existence? Well, why don't we write an anonymous letter? There's no need for that. Black said in a cold voice, Wang Lu must know about the arrival of Kanglin, so we don't need to remind him. Kanglin is an old rival of Sun Booping. If Sun Booping comes back to life or passes something to Wang Lu, there's no reason for Wang Lu not to respond to Kanglin. Of course, if he's really that slow. Woof woof woof. Just as Black was about to go on, A passerby suddenly came from the opposite side of the road. This person's cultivation base was obviously not low. Before he appeared, neither Luo Xiao nor Black noticed him. After that person appeared, he stared at Black with burning eyes, as if he was surprised by the sound made by the black dog. It was not uncommon for spirit dogs to speak human language in the world, but Black was not playing the role of a spirit dog at this time, but just an ordinary native dog, and an ordinary native dog of course could not speak. In order to avoid being exposed, Black had to bark twice like a normal animal. Who knew that it would be fine if it didn't bark? But when it barked, it made the eyes of the passerby light up. Ha, big black dog. Although its appearance is mediocre, its bark is full of vigor and endless charm. Obviously, it's a good dog with good meat. Hey buddy, I want to buy your dog. How much are you willing to sell it for? Luo Xiao was shocked. What did you say? The man said with a smile, I've been in the city of immortals for so long, but I haven't eaten good dog meat. Unexpectedly, in a place with a lot of people, there are also a lot of animal protectors, which makes people uncomfortable to eat. Now there's a rare opportunity. This dog doesn't seem to be a spirit dog or a spirit pet, so why don't you sell it to me? I'll give you 200 spirit stones, okay? 20,000. Damn it, it's you? At this time, Luo Xiao recovered and suppressed his shock. He didn't say the second half of the sentence, because he recognized that this passerby was Zen Master Guru. Zen Master Guru was famous for two things. One was that she had a world-famous bestie, Taoist Master Nanfei's Wang Wu. The second was that this person was extremely fanatical about dog meat. Although she had never done anything like stealing or poisoning dogs, in order to eat dog meat, what she did could not be called open and aboveboard. Encountering this kind of mental illness, Luo Xiao could only be unlucky. He waved his hand and refused the other party's request for a deal, and then led Black out of the alley. After Luo Xiao left, Zen Master Guru suddenly showed a slightly lonely expression. Alas, I was going to have a happy last meal. It's rare to see a native dog with an immortal flavor. This guy must have the bloodline of an immortal beast that has been dormant for tens of thousands of years. The taste must be unforgettable. What a pity, what a pity. Looking at Luo Xiao, mainly at the back of the black dog at his feet, Zen Master Guru's expression suddenly changed. No, I can't just let it go like this. My life must not end in regret. I must eat until my mouth is full of oil before I die. This unknown dog breeder. I'm really sorry, but your dog is mine. Chapter 762. In the high-level office courtyard of the organizing committee in Immortal 5 area of the City of Immortals, Feng Yin Taoist Master helplessly put down the folder in his hand. The official business that he needed to deal with was piled up like a mountain. Even with his powerful primordial spirit and skillful handling of official business, he still found it quite tricky. However, at this time there was a person who wanted to give him trouble, which was really a big headache for him. Senior brother, look at this report. There's another shameless sect trying to use the opportunity of the grand competition to swindle money and things. Look at this shameless face. They dare to ask for millions of spirit stones for a substitute contestant. Why don't they just die? If you ask me, I should directly approve it. Since your sect is unable to cultivate talents, it's better to transfer the contestant to another sect for training. Let's see if they dare to ask for money. Senior brother, what do you think of my idea? If you don't mind, I'll sign it for you. Ha ha ha. Don't worry about the handwriting. I've forged your handwriting for so many years that I can guarantee that even the sincerity paper can't be distinguished. Listening to this long list of words, the name that Feng Yin signed on the other report was crooked, which made Feng Yin, who liked tidiness, very upset. Wang Wu, are you really bored recently? If you're bored, I suggest you go into closed-door training and don't go out until you reach Yuanying stage. Senior brother, you know that I can't break through Yuanying stage, so what's the use of closed-door training? Moreover, I'm now the #1 king pill in 9 regions. When I reach Yuanying stage, I may not be the #1 Yuanying stage in 9 regions, so the advertising effect is far worse. If I go out to eat now, the inns will rush to invite me to eat and drink for free. Later, as long as I set up a sign saying that the #1 king pill in 9 regions has visited here, It would be an excellent advertisement. But if I advance to yuaning stage, people can't just set up a sign saying that the number 65536 yuaning stage in 9 regions has visited here, right? I thought it was some kind of advertisement where 100,000 people would win the prize. It's like this. Some time ago I had a sudden impulse and looked at the sky at night. I saw the Death Gate star shining above your head. This is a sign that if you don't go into seclusion, you will regret it for the rest of your life. So, please don't waste your time here and go into seclusion. Senior Marshal Brother, with your pair of eyes that can't tell the difference between tea and year without glasses, what kind of astronomical phenomena can you see? Ha ha ha, don't tell me you've been blinded by the streetlights? Wang Wu chuckled as she nonchalantly pulled out a piece of paper from the pile of documents. It was the signature of some small sects applying for financial support from the organizing committee. Wang Wu glanced at it and curled her lips. Then, she scribbled a vivid middle finger on the leader's signature column and signed Feng Yin's name beside it. Feng Yin couldn't take it anymore. Wang Wu, a while ago, 8th brother sent a letter saying that he had discovered a rare treasure trove deep within the abyssal mountain, but he doesn't have enough manpower to excavate it. I see that you don't have anything to do recently. Why don't you help him scout the way? Isn't the ancient immortal trapping array located in the abyssal mountain? If I go there, I won't be able to come back. Senior Marshal Brother, are you deliberately teasing me? No, I don't want to directly tell you to get lost because we're brothers and sisters of the same sect. With that, Feng Yin slammed the table. Suddenly, the entire courtyard shook. Of course, the mountainous pile of documents was also in a state of disunity. But Feng Yin didn't care anymore. Okay, I'll go. Wang Wu touched her head. I won't disturb you to cultivate the virgin skill by yourself. After Wang Wu left, Feng Yin looked at the mess in the room and felt even more tired. Lucien, are you there? Yes. While speaking, the second elder of the Heavenly Sword Hall suddenly appeared. He glanced around and shook his head. This guy is always so troublesome. Feng Yin said, her situation. You should have seen it. How is it? Lucien said, it's very unstable. Although she always pretends to be indifferent, but, to be honest, Senior Marshal Brother, even if you don't wear glasses you can see that she is very weak right now. Yes, if she was in her normal state, I'm afraid I would have been so angry that I would have turned the entire courtyard upside down. Lucien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nodded. Actually, I originally judged it based on this. As he spoke, he picked up a newspaper on the ground. Imitating your handwriting to draw a middle finger? That's too child's play. If she was in her normal state, she would at least draw. In short, what she made was much more horrifying than this. Do you think it's necessary to let Old Seventh take a look? No need. Although Old Seventh's medicine skills are unparalleled in the world, he can't handle this kind of thing. I don't know what the hell Wang Wu is doing, but her primordial spirit is close to collapse. Her non-phase method should be the most stable. Although she often updates the version, her physical body and primordial spirit are very stable. Even if measured by the supreme level standard, they are still very good. Feng Yin Taoist master was also confused about this. He said, that's why I let you come and take a look. These days I replaced Wang Lu to keep watch here, so I can't grasp the details of what's going on outside. Lucien said, speaking of which, I really don't know where that kid Wang Lu went. As for Wang Wu's side, there's no other situation, but there's one thing that I think is a bit strange. Her scoundrel friends seem to be getting fewer and fewer. Speaking of which, those friends of hers, Senior Marshal Brother, are you familiar with them? Feng Yin shook his head. I've never seen them, and I don't know when she got to know those people. And what's even more strange is that some of them, with her temperament, should not be able to make friends with her. But their relationship is as good as sisters. Lucien said, moreover, each of them has a unique skill. They may not necessarily have earth-shattering strength, but in a certain field, they have basically reached the top level in the world. Apart from that, there were very few overlapping fields in which they were good at. Wait a minute, Senior Marshal Brother, do you feel that perhaps they are? Upon hearing this, Feng Yin's eyes became bigger and bigger. He said, what do you mean? Lucien softly said, perhaps they are all members of a secret organization? Yes, I think so too. To be able to gather such a group of special people, it can only be the power of an organization, right? Moreover, it's an organization that only accepts female cultivators with certain specialties. Regardless of race, age, or any other factors, as long as they are women, as long as they have a skill they can join. I guess the initiator should be a feminist. However, after the establishment of this organization, it seems that there is no special purpose. Yes, I haven't heard of such an organization that has done anything big. It should be similar to a like-minded group. It's not a bad thing for 5th Junior Marshall sister to join such an organization and get to know all kinds of cultivators. Moreover, there are so many capable people in that organization, so it should be helpful to her current situation, right? Unfortunately, I can't leave now, so I can't help her too much. Senior Marshall brother, you've helped her enough for so many years. Let her deal with her own matter. At the same time, a certain Spirit Sword sect elder who joined the secret female organization was drinking herself into oblivion in a restaurant. Ah, waiter, hurry up and bring more wine. Didn't I tell you not to stop the wine on the table? Is your restaurant okay? Guest, you've already drunk more than 200 kilograms, you can't drink anymore. Why can't I drink? Haven't you heard the old saying? There's only a tired cow, not a field that gets soaked. Do you think I look like I'm going to get soaked? No, but you can't drink too much of this wine because my family doesn't have that much. Are you afraid that I can't afford it? What a joke. I, the #1 king pill in 9 regions, come to your house to drink your signature wine. Just the advertising fee alone is worth a lifetime free discount. Moreover, although I don't have any cash, I can sign the bill. Whose signature do you want? I'll show it to you. Do you want the sect leader's signature? Bring me the wine. I'll give you an IOU of 10,000 spirit stones. In short, bring me the wine. The waiter had no choice but to obediently bring the 2 jars of wine. As a result, not long after they were put on the table, they were all drunk. At this time, the shopkeeper's face was already bitter. Initially, for the sake of advertising effect, he invited this great goddess to his restaurant, only to find out that it was a big hole. With her making such a fuss, how could the restaurant still have any business? What advertising effect would be gone? Just when the shopkeeper was in despair, a guest came in with a smile. However, without waiting for the waiter to greet him, he waved his hand to indicate that he didn't need anyone to accompany him. Then he went up to the 2nd floor and walked to the side of Wang Wu. Yo, Xiao Wu. Isn't it boring to drink alone? Why don't you call me? Wang Wu's eyes were blurred from drunkenness. Xiao, ha, it's me. Besides me, who else can accompany you to drink now? Wang Wu was silent for a moment. They are still here. In a sense, that's true. Unfortunately, they can't accompany you to drink, right? So you should cherish the people in front of you. Xiao Qi said, unceremoniously picked up a jar of wine and drank it like a whale drinking water. Xiao Wu, there's something I need your help with. What's the matter? I want to eat a good meal. Wang Wu froze for a moment and then turned to look at the waiter. What do you want to eat? Just order it, I can sign the bill. No, not this kind of common goods sold in restaurants. I want a unique, unforgettable, no, even if I die, I won't forget a peerless delicacy. Wang Wu froze for a moment, then quickly waved her hand. No, I can't let you eat Xiao Bai. Wang Lu especially treasures that little guy. In the past, he even had an ambiguous relationship with her mother. If I feed her to you, Wang Lu will kill me. Hey, what kind of person do you think I am? That Xiao Bai can't either. Xiao Wu, you hurt me too much, okay? In your eyes, I'm a heartless animal just to eat dog meat? Wang Wu thought for a moment. I can put it in a more gentle and positive way, but in essence, you really do everything for a bite of good dog meat. Do you need me to give you some examples? Xiao Qi was suddenly speechless. After a while, he said, well, to tell you the truth, I really have no interest in Bai Shixian and Quanzhou Hua. Because you've heard that old saying, right? 1 black, 2 yellow, 3 flowers for white. Of those 2, 1 is white, 1 is flower, both belong to inferior goods. I have no interest. Oh. Chapter 763. This is the one and only black dog you were talking about, the one that stole the fortune of heaven and earth? Doesn't look like much. In the private room of the restaurant, Zen Master Guru excitedly showed Wang Wu the tracking map she had drawn. There was a vivid black dog on the map. There was a human figure beside the dog, but it was blurry and squeezed into the corner of the map. There was only one small dog, and it looked very perfunctory. This was a tracking map drawn by a cultivator's spell. It could lock onto the target's position and show its status. Zen Master Guru spent a lot of effort before carefully avoiding the dog's owner and drawing this tracking map. But no matter how Wang Wu looked at it, the dog on the map was just an ordinary meat dog. She couldn't understand why Xiaoqi would spend so much effort on a meat dog. Ordinary meat dog? That's not professional. This dog looks ordinary, but there's a trace of immortal charm hidden in its body. I'm afraid it's an inheritance from the prehistoric era. If I didn't have a pair of godly eyes for dogs, I wouldn't be able to see it. This kind of hidden bloodline is the rarest. Generally speaking, immortal bloodlines are either extremely powerful, passed down from generation to generation without reducing its purity, or with the passage of time, the descendants can only inherit a small part of their ancestors' supernatural abilities. If they want to develop it, they need to continuously trace back to their roots. And this kind of bloodline that has been condensed for tens of thousands of years but is extremely hidden. It's the first time I've seen it after eating dogs for so many years. As Xiaoqi spoke, his body trembled with excitement. His cheeks were crimson, and crystal droplets of liquid hung from the corner of his mouth. Wang Wu was shocked. I say, Xiaoqi, wake up. You're thinking about a big black dog right now. It's not good for your reputation to have an orgasm now. Xiaoqi was shocked. He wiped away his saliva and glared at Wang Wu. Then he explained, you can't understand the attraction of a dog with this bloodline to foodie people. Wang Wu was confused. Is it really that delicious? I don't think you're this interested in Little White usually. To be honest, it might not be delicious. Xiaoqi explained, in fact, although Little White is an immortal beast, it may not taste better than a native dog in the mortal world. After all, immortal level blood is not used for seasoning. But I've been eating dogs for so many years. I'm tired of eating dog meat no matter how delicious it is. Wang Wu smiled and said, then why are you so excited? This is a problem of the collection rate of delicacies. As a professional dog meat gourmet, just eating the best was not considered a skill. To be able to eat all kinds of dog meat in the world and store the taste in the primordial spirit, so that the collection rate could reach 100%, that was the real skill. Over the years, I've basically eaten the most delicious ones, and I've also used various opportunities to taste several kinds of super rare dog meats, including the meat of celestial dogs. However, there were a few bloodlines that he had never had the chance to eat, and this bloodline was one of them. I don't expect to eat all the dog meat in the world in this short life. After all, there is no such thing as pure gold, but if I can have one more, I will never miss the opportunity to increase the collection rate. Well, I'll allow you to eat it, but can't you do this kind of thing alone? Why are you talking to me? Xiaoqi said, I need you to help me catch the dog. I offered 20,000 spirit stones to the dog owner before, but he didn't sell it. It seems that he is not someone who can be bought with money. Wang Wu interrupted, that's because you didn't offer a high enough price. There is no object in this world that can't be bought with money. You can try to offer 200 million. Not to mention his dog, I think even his mother can be sold. Xiaoqi said, well, why don't you sponsor me 200 million spirit stones? Let me experience the infinite power of money? Wang Wu was silent for a moment, and then said seriously, or we can take a shortcut, such as drugging the dog and find a chance to steal it. No, you just asked him for a price. If the dog disappeared in a short time, it would be easy to associate it with you. So we might as well do it secretly. Xiaoqi asked, how do we do it secretly? It's very simple. It's like hiding a drop of water in the sea. We can drug the dog owner and then steal all the valuable things in his house. Or we can do it secretly. I'll go to Old 7 and ask for some strange drugs. I'll drug the dog owner and his neighbors, and then I'll take all their property. In this way, no one will notice that we lost a black dog. Speaking of this, Wang Wu's eyes lit up, and she seemed eager to try. Don't worry, Xiaoqi, you're my best friend. I will fulfill your wish for you no matter what. To be honest, don't you feel guilty for using your best friend to fulfill your ugly desires? As long as we don't lose money, it doesn't matter if we lose or not. At the same time, in another corner of the city of immortals, the feeling of palpitation? Luo Xiao curiously asked the big black dog at his feet. It's as if I've been locked by some powerful existence. The former high-level member of Dixian, who had transformed into the black dog, said seriously, right now I feel very bad. Luo Xiao also felt a bit heavy when he heard this. Is it Kanglin? I can't avoid him even if I hide in the city of immortals? It's not Kanglin. Black said, although he has just arrived and his power is still at a low point, the oppression of being locked by the fallen immortal will be 10 times stronger than it is now. I'm afraid I can't even talk to you. Luo Zhao's brain turned quickly. Then could it be that inexplicable woman from before? The one who offered 20,000 spirit stones to buy you? Her. Black thought for a moment and then lifted up the remaining trace of immortal spirit in his body. He immediately realized that he had been traced, which made him angry. Who the hell is she? How dare she do something to me? Damn it, if I still have my cultivation base, I would take her dog life. How could someone dare to complicate matters at a time like this? Luo Xiao said sarcastically, who can you blame for this? I'm afraid that Kanglin is so afraid that he even abandoned his own body and turned himself into a dog to hide himself. So if there's any trouble, it's your own fault. Ignorant fool. It's just because you haven't seen the power of the fallen immortal. In the past, Sun Buping could only be regarded as the inferior among the fallen immortals. After he came to 9 regions because of the impact on his primordial spirit, he couldn't even recall his past cultivation method. Even so, he still became the king of Dixian. Kanglin Immortal is a relatively powerful existence among the fallen immortals. Even if his strength is damaged because the passage has not been opened, it's enough to sweep 9 regions. If you want to survive in his hands, nothing is too much. Hearing Black's solemn words, Luo Xiao put away his sarcastic tone and said seriously, so for this terrible opponent, what we have to do is to wait here. We have to wait, at least until Wang Lu and the others take the initiative to fight with Kanglin. Only then can we get out of the city of immortals. Otherwise, no matter how careful your plan is and how cautious your action is, it's not worth mentioning for the fallen immortal. He can lock you in one thought, come to you in an instant and destroy your body and soul. If you want to live longer, you have to wait patiently. Even after 10 days, when he recovers his true immortal strength and sweeps through 9 regions, there will be Wanxian League and other Dixian immortals in front of him. You and I must hide behind the scenes. Luo Xiao, you must understand the value of you and me in this war. Okay. Then let's wait patiently. Hey, do you smell anything strange? Black looked up and said, strange smell? Even you, a dog, can't smell it, is it my illusion? But I do feel that the air in this room smells wrong. Before his voice fell, Luo Zhao's expression suddenly changed. Damn it, someone poisoned us? I can't raise my true yuan. What's your situation? Hey, talk to me, you. Damn it, you actually fainted. After shouting these words, Luo Xiao began to feel that his eyelids became heavy, and before long, he couldn't hold it anymore and fainted to the ground. Damn it, at this time who on earth did this to him? Wasn't this new trouble a little too big? This was going to drag the future of the entire 9 regions into it. In the haze, Luo Xiao heard a woman's lively voice. It's a success. Next, let's sweep his whole family and take away all the valuable things. This voice was vaguely familiar. It was just that, before Luo Xiao could recall the owner of the voice, he had completely fallen into a coma. At the same time, in another corner of the group of immortal tombs, the place where thousands of tribulation thunders gathered suddenly disappeared. The dazzling lightning and the distorted space all disappeared without a trace at this moment. The only thing left behind was a tall metal puppet and a petite girl shrouded in purple light. After these 2 people appeared, the puppet suddenly trembled. The girl cast a concerned look and then got an explanation. Feeling of palpitation? The girl asked doubtfully, what's wrong? Is there a problem with your synchronization? It's not a problem with synchronization. A slightly dull voice came from the tall metal puppet. It should be something left by sun booping. Just now a strange wave suddenly gushed out of this giant divine weapon, which made my heart start to twitch. It was as if I was stared at by some terrifying beast, or as if I suddenly stared at some excellent prey, which made me nervous and excited. The girl thought for a moment and her face changed slightly. I'm afraid this is the early warning mechanism of the giant divine weapon being triggered. Early warning mechanism? Whose warning is it? Who else could it be? The giant divine weapon is the ultimate weapon made by sun booping. In front of it, all the creatures in 9 regions are as weak as ants. What can make the giant divine weapon vigilant is, of course, the fallen immortal. After a pause, the girl said in a deep voice, I'm afraid your guess is true. The fallen immortal has begun to descend. Descend? Then let's go kill him. With that, the huge metal puppet flashed away. Chapter 764. In the bitter and cold land of the extreme north, the cold wind whistled like a knife, and the sky was full of snow. The vast expanse of whiteness was like a piece of gauze, covering the sky and the sun. This place was located in the first level of the 9 regions, a well-known deadland of the 9 regions. The boundless white snow and glacier could not breed many creatures. Except for a few ice spirits and snow monsters, only the whistling wind could bring a little vitality to the dead land. Suddenly, an uninvited guest came to this dead land. Boom! With an earth-shattering noise, the glacier in the extreme north bloomed with huge cracks and then broke. A gray giant shadow showed a magnificent outline in the broken ice. The giant shadow's whole body shone with dazzling luster, which shone with the sparkling and translucent ancient mysterious ice, like a group of bright stars. The giant shadow appeared out of thin air, cracked the glacier, and then stepped on the broken ice and frozen soil, striding forward. Every step caused the earth to shake and the glacier to crack. The accumulated snow on the distant snow-capped mountain rolled down. This giant walked on the glacier like a beast from the age of desolation. Every time it raised its hand or foot, it had endless power. The ice spirits and snow monsters that lived on the snow-capped mountain panicked and ran away. A moment later, a snow-white giant dragon soared up from the age of desolation. The dragon race of 9 regions was born noble. It was a superior bloodline inherited from the age of desolation. The adult dragon race had supreme magical ability. This giant dragon had been sleeping here for thousands of years. When it woke up, it was full of panic. Its long body twisted several times and then flew straight into the sky, disappearing without a trace. This giant that suddenly appeared in this world of ice and snow was so unstoppable. However, not long after it ran, a purple cloud flashed across the sky like lightning, rolling toward the giant's chest and violently hitting it. The giant's huge body suddenly stiffened and stopped in place, unable to take a step forward. The purple cloud actually twisted and changed its shape, as if it was about to collapse. After a while, it condensed into a human shape. Tetragon's pretty eyes were filled with tears. Her hands held her red head, but her eyes were filled with shock and anger. Wang Lu, are you crazy? The giant slowly shook his head. My IQ is very high, how could I be crazy? If you weren't crazy, why would you dare to come to this place? As Tetragon spoke, he forcefully pushed the giant's chest, as if trying to push him out of this bitter cold land. Do you really think you're invincible just because you have a synchronization rate of 30%? Even if you fight against me in my heyday, you may not have 100% chance of winning. How dare you provoke the genuine fallen immortal? If I don't come now, I won't have the chance in the future, Wang Lu said and stopped walking. How could he not know what kind of personality Tetragon had after living with him for 3 years? If there was no reasonable explanation, she would not hold it in for the time being. If they couldn't convince her, then they would have to fight. Time was precious, so Wang Lu could only make it short. The fallen immortal who came here is not in a complete state. The passageway between the 2 worlds hasn't been opened yet, so he'll have to pay a price for coming here rashly. Tetragon was shocked. How did you know? At that time, the passage between the 2 worlds was almost opened. It was the cultivators of my Lingjian school who blocked the breach one after another. Naturally, I know more about this passageway than anyone else. Wang Lu explained in a deep voice, and then said, moreover, the signal from the giant divine weapon just now, in addition to an early warning, also seems to be a kind of urging, while he's sick, urging him to die. I don't know how much power the fallen immortal will lose when they forcibly come to this world. But since the giant divine weapon didn't want me to escape, but urged me to go, I think there should be a chance of winning. Upon hearing this, Tetragon was silent. After a long while, he said, with a synchronization rate of 30%, your strength is only a bit stronger than my heyday. In a head-on confrontation, you are far from being the opponent of the fallen immortal, unless it's the most despicable ones. However, if you have a synchronization rate of more than 80%, even the strongest among the fallen immortals can fight. You really don't need to be so anxious. Wang Lu said, how long will it take for the synchronization rate to go from 30% to 80%? 1 year, 2 years, or 8 or 10 years? In the past 3 years, I was able to break through 30% thanks to an epiphany. And from 30% to 80%, how many epiphanies do I need? Hearing Wang Lu mention the word epiphany, Tetragon's face suddenly turned red, but she quickly suppressed it, so it was not obvious. Moreover, what Wang Lu said was right, so she had no way to refute it. So that's why you're here to kill him? Although this move is indeed risky, it's worth the risk. The only problem is, Wang Lu, who was driving the giant divine weapon, frowned slightly and said, that guy is very vigilant and actually hit himself. It doesn't matter, I'll look for him. Tetragon took a deep breath and then operated her immortal spirit. The Emperor's purple chi erupted like a volcano, gushing out from the center of her forehead and straight into the sky. A moment later, the world of ice and snow was shrouded in purple. The 9 regions was vast and boundless. Even the land of a region was tens of millions of miles. Although this extreme north was not included in the number of 9 regions, its area was not inferior to that of a large region. With just a thought from Tetragon, the Emperor's purple chi covered a large area of this place, and the power of the King of Dixian was undoubtedly revealed. It was just that, this purple chi had shrouded the sky over this extremely cold place for a long time, but no change was found. Half an hour later, Tetragon slowly shook his head and said, no, I can't find it at all. During this period, Wang Lu also launched the array on the top of the giant divine weapon, and brought out a huge round plate with a diameter of more than 300 meters. It was like a pot lid and floated above his head, constantly rotating and emitting invisible waves to the surroundings. However, after some twists and turns, there was still no result. Wang Lu could not help but scold. Are all the fallen immortals so cowardly? Tetragon sighed and said, they boast that they are the immortals in the upper realm. They have always been arrogant and regard everything in the lower realm as ants. How could they be afraid of us? However, after Sun Booping led us to a few victories, they had to become a lot more careful. However, in the end they still can't change their arrogant nature. Like today, we have already come to their door, but they still avoided us. Each of them is a big problem. After a pause, Tetragon said, encountering such an opponent, we were too reckless today. We rashly exposed our cards, but we couldn't even catch the trace of the opponent. After that, the enemy is in the dark while we are in the light. When he recovers his strength, trouble will come. Wang Lu pondered and said, when he came to 9 regions from the fallen immortal world, the laws of heaven and earth and so on should have earth-shaking changes. If he wants to recover his strength, it can't be done silently, right? Tetragon said, that's impossible. Even though when a cultivator reaches the peak of cultivation, the whole body is overflowing with immortal spirit and can be self-generated, the existence of the fallen immortal is, after all, an alien species in 9 regions. The surrounding spiritual energy and even the laws of the great Tao will faintly reject them. For cultivators who can touch the laws, the existence of the fallen immortal is very strong and can't be hidden. There are so many fallen immortals, is there no exception? Although I haven't seen through the last level of the immortal path, but Sun Booping said so. So that's how it is. If even Sun Booping said the same thing, then it was mostly right. After all, he was a fallen immortal, so he couldn't even make a mistake in this kind of basic common sense. Since the other party can't recover his strength silently, then we can't find him now, Wang Lu said and then sneered. It seems that someone is helping him hide his tracks. This inference surprised Tetragon. Someone is helping him? Black? It's not black. I just scanned it with the radar, and there's no unusual trace around. Even if the fallen immortal has any special hiding method, it's impossible that they can't even find a lackey of the fallen immortal. It's not a specific person who is helping him, but the continent under our feet. 9 regions? How is that possible? Tetragon was extremely surprised. After they ascended to the upper realm, they no longer belonged to the creatures of 9 regions. Moreover, they are the great enemies of 9 regions. How could they be protected by the continent? This time it was Wang Lu's turn to be surprised. You guys have been fighting with them for so many years, but you don't even know this kind of common sense? Didn't Sun Buping tell you? Although they don't belong to the creatures of 9 regions, most of them ascended from 9 regions. Relative to 9 regions, they are cultivators of the upper realm like superiors and subordinates. Even if the superiors are disadvantageous to the subordinates, how can the subordinates disobey the orders of the superiors? Most of the fallen immortals have the authority to control 9 regions. Didn't you guys encounter this kind of situation in the past? Hearing this, Tetragon was surprised and speechless. A moment later, his eyes widened and he said, "So that's how it is. No wonder. There were several battles in the past when we were about to win, but they suddenly counterattacked. Previously I thought they were hiding their cards, but now I'm afraid they used the power of 9 regions. Damn it, we worked hard to protect this continent, but in the end we were stabbed in the back by this continent." Wang Lu laughed in spite of himself and said, "Why are you angry with a dead thing? If you want to talk about suffering a loss, Lingjian School also suffered a big loss because of this. A group of proud children who were blessed by the providence of 9 regions were harmed by the providence, and their school was almost destroyed. But now they don't take it to heart." Tetragon shook his head and didn't argue with Wang Lu on this topic. "What can you do?" "What can I do?" Wang Lu shrugged and said, "Since 9 regions wants to protect him, what else can I do?" Tetragon was silent for a long time and said, "Just let it go? What else? Destroy the 9 regions as well?" Wang Lu said, and a bright smile bloomed on his face. He was assimilated with the giant divine weapon, and the smile extended to the giant divine weapon. The giant opened its mouth, showing terror and ferocity. Chapter 765. I'm warning you, if you kill me, you'll regret it. Regret? Ha 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 ha. What a joke. When have I ever regretted anything? Whether it was tricking Luli into eating a lollipop or stealing senior brother's golden seal, I've always done things with a clear mind. I don't regret or feel guilty. This is called carefree. I say, Xiao Wu, your words don't have any sense of carefree heroism. Instead, you've lost all your moral integrity. I won't regret it even if I lose all my moral integrity, Wang Wu said coldly and turned to look at the person who spoke first, or rather the dog. In the warm hut, a big black dog was hung upside down from the beam with a rope. Next to it were scissors to cut open its belly and hot water to clean its fur and water. It was time to sharpen the knife. The black dog's life was hanging by a thread, but it didn't panic like an ordinary animal. Instead, it spoke calmly and calmly. If you kill me, you'll regret it. This sentence indeed saved the dog's life. Although the 2 women in the hut were not afraid of a dog, they were surprised by its abnormal behavior, and were ready to listen to what it had to say. However, the black dog was silent. After a long time, it turned its head and impatiently urged, "Let me go, what are you waiting for?" Wang Wu was so angry that she laughed. This dog is so arrogant. Xiao Qi, let's deal with this animal. Get the dog's penis first. As she spoke, she came over to cut open its belly with the scissors. Her murderous look was not fake. The big black dog was shocked. Did this woman have any eyesight? No matter how he thought about it, it couldn't be an ordinary beast that could say something like that. At the very least, it might be some kind of spiritual type beast, and at the very least it was even more impressive. Perhaps the owner of this dog was a mighty figure. Why did this woman act so recklessly? Did she really want to kill it? And from the looks of it, these 2 women didn't kill the dog for anything else. It was purely to satisfy their appetite. For a mouthful of dog meat, they didn't care about anything else. Was there something wrong with their brains? This Wang Wu was indeed one of the weirdos in the 9 regions. Black was deliberately acting mysterious because it did not want to expose its identity. Because if its identity was exposed, it would probably die a worse death than Black Dog. It was able to form an alliance with Luo Xiao because Luo Xiao had already betrayed the Wanxian League and was considered a rebel. However, although Wang Wu was a weirdo, she had always been on the side of the Wanxian League, so it was difficult to convince her. But now that his life was at stake, Black had no other choice. Back then, in order to evade Kanglin's targeting and to gain Luo Xiao's trust, he didn't hesitate to destroy all of his supernatural powers and transform into a big black dog. Now that he was knocked out by someone, he really didn't have the slightest chance to resist. I'm Black. We know what color you are, we're not blind. Wang Wu angrily kicked him, which dislocated Black's internal organs. After kicking him, Wang Wu still had a smile on her face. I can help this animal to improve its blood circulation. I don't know if it will taste better. You can't eat me. I'm Black. Dog, you talk a lot of nonsense. If you're not black, can you be white? If you're not black, Shao-Chi won't bother to catch you. Shao-Chi, while preparing the sauce for cooking the dog meat, shook his head and said, 1 black, 2 yellow, 3 flowers and 4 white, this makes sense. The big black dog was really anxious. While vomiting dog blood, he struggled and said, I'm Dixian. Then I'm a fairy immortal. Wang Wu laughed, but halfway through her laughter, she suddenly stopped. Then she stretched out her hand and released an invisible force that turned the big black dog's head and tail upside down. After looking at it carefully, she asked in disbelief, You're black. It's me. F***CK. Wang Wu was startled. She immediately put down the big black dog and took a few steps back. The big black dog suddenly swung under the beam like a swing. He was dripping with dog blood and looked very embarrassed. How did you turn into a dog? Did someone add a magical beauty mole to your body? Wang Wu said and began to sneer, and her murderous intent appeared. This time it was not the killing intent of slaughtering a chicken or a dog, but the killing intent of overflowing true yuan and the impending war. Although she didn't know what Black was doing, turning himself into a big black dog that could be eaten alive, he was, after all, the running dog of the fallen immortal that almost destroyed the entire city of immortals. If it weren't for Wang Lu and Faceless One, perhaps there would still be no solution to the strange poison of the fallen immortal. At the same time, Black knew that if there was any concealment at this time, it would be a dead end, so he immediately told the whole situation. The fallen immortal has arrived. What? Upon hearing this sentence, Wang Wu and Shao-Chi were surprised. Black secretly sneered, thinking that he had made the right bet. At this time, it would be difficult to shake the other party's mind with any other nonsense. Only the fallen immortal was a problem that no one could ignore. The one who came is called Kanglin Immortal. He was a very strong person among the fallen immortals in the past. In the past, he could also gain the upper hand in the fight against the top 3 people of Dixian, but he has a weakness and I happen to know it. Black was still straightforward and pointed out his own value in a few words. Shao-Chi shook his head and said, You're the running dog of the fallen immortal, so it's not surprising that you know some secrets of the fallen immortal. But what does it have to do with us? I have betrayed the fallen immortal, and now I have no way to go. I can only stand on the same side as you for the time being. Wang Wu sneered and said, When you're in our hands, you betray your master and have no way to go. Do you think we also have a dog's brain? If I didn't betray my master and have no way to go, how could I be so absurd as to be captured by you? This sentence was somewhat convincing. As the top person in Dixian and the number 1 running dog of the fallen immortal in 9 regions, the strength of Black was obvious to all. Although Wang Wu was not afraid of it, she did not dare to say that she could easily defeat it, let alone capture it alive. No matter what happened before, I'm on your side now, Black said, and no matter how much you want to pursue my past crimes, now we all have a common enemy. Even if we want to settle accounts, we should wait until after autumn. After saying this, Wang Wu and Shao-Chi gradually restrained their killing intent. They looked at each other in silence. After a while, Wang Wu said, "You just said that you know the weakness of Kanglin? This is also the trump card that you rely on to save your life, right?" Black didn't answer directly but said, "I know you want to kill me, but I'll say it again. If you kill me, you will regret it." "Okay, then I won't kill you." Wang Wu smiled and reached out to cut off the rope that tied the dog. The big black dog fell to the ground with a thud, and its nose was bleeding. However, it got up and shook its fur. But its demeanor did not seem particularly embarrassed. However, the next moment, the dog's leg turned red, and a sharp pain came into Black's brain, which made it tremble involuntarily. Looking back, it saw that Wang Wu was holding a kitchen knife and had already cut off a piece of meat from its thigh. Wang Wu sneered and said, "You can avoid the death penalty, but you can't escape punishment. In any case, your useful place is nothing more than your head, and the other parts are just ordinary dog meat. It's rare for us sisters to set up such a dog meat hot pot stall, so don't waste it." Black endured the pain and said, "Aren't you afraid that What's there to be afraid of? I know you're not afraid of death, and you won't give up the dignity of the dignified Dixian to be a dog. And people who are afraid of death should not be afraid of suffering, right?" Xiaoqi also sneered. At this time, her smile looked 80 to 90% similar to Wang Wu's. "You spread strange poisons in the city of immortals and killed cultivators from all walks of life. Your hands are extremely murderous. Do you really think that we will spare you just because of a few words from you? Later, Xiaoqi and I will set up a dog meat stall. Before we eat and drink enough, you'd better say everything that needs to be said. Otherwise, although the fallen immortal is tricky, it's not more tricky than a fallen immortal plus a fallen immortal dog." "If we can't make good use of our power, we'd rather not have it." Black was silent. This Wang Wu was even more absurd than the rumors, but when she was serious, she was far more powerful than the rumors. However, there was one thing that she was right about. People who were afraid of death were indeed not afraid of suffering. I'll start from the beginning. The thing is, after a short period of hustle and bustle, the land of the far north once again regained its deathly silence. The indomitable giant and the purple cloud around the giant had disappeared, leaving only a broken glacier and frozen earth. Suddenly, the outline of a tall iceberg standing on the frozen earth twisted and began to shrink rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it shrank into a tall figure. It was a thin man in a blue gown. The gown was shining, and the blue color was as profound as the sea and the sky. However, the man's face was violent, which contrasted sharply with the brilliance of his whole body. "Damn it, you two ants dare to provoke us. In the future, I will peel off your skin and pull out your tendons." With that, as if to vent his anger, he waved his fist to the side silently. However, there was a sound of a landslide in the distance, and a large piece of iceberg collapsed and cracked. However, after breaking, it did not roll down but was sucked in. Gravel and ice mixed together from slow to fast, and finally flew towards the man like a whistling meteorite. However, halfway through, it rapidly shrank. When it neared the man, it was already as small as fine sand. It was all grasped in the man's palm, and then disappeared without a trace. After this grasp, there were forever fewer icebergs in the north. The man's expression softened a little, and then he revealed a mocking smile. "Although this land is lowly, it tastes good. It seems that as long as I concentrate on gathering the luck here, I can restore my strength to the bottom line in 7 or 8 days. Humph, even if it's the bottom line, it's enough to move unhindered in this world." With that, he moved his feet, and suddenly the earth surged like waves. There was a loud buzzing sound within a radius of 100 miles. After an unknown amount of time, the man nodded, and the earth stopped shaking. At this time, the ground within a radius of 100 miles was reduced by more than 10 feet. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.